difference here? Well, in my study, and what I was really hypothesizing when I went over to Giza in 1997 with John West was that Giza was a repository of knowledge, of sciences and mathematics and geometry. And that was, of course, not my original idea. Many others have proposed this, that it is a repository. But what I'm going to present here tonight is the clear evidence of that. And my work here is not theoretical. This work is all in geometry. And everything I'm going to show you here is recreated. There's nothing that is not provable. So what they were doing is they were encoding ancient scientific knowledge, including the measures of the earth and the heavens, using geometry and mathematics. Now, what do I mean by measures of earth and heavens? Well, we know the measuring system is a complex way of measuring and dividing. And there's a lot known about the history of measuring. There's not very many people actually have not met anyone that can come out and explain to me, where did the measuring system begin? Where's that first inch or cubit? How did they get that first number? Where did they come from? And I'm going to be able to show you that here very quickly, very simply. So what they were doing, measuring system and geometry on the ground in those architectural monuments there, they were precisely charting the motions of the 25,920-year precessional cycle known as the Great Year. So what we're talking about is there is a motion that we notice, and the academic world will claim that it is a wobble of our Earth's axis that takes 25,920 years. There's a little bit of a problem with that, and Walter Crutton will be the first one to back me up on this, and he's studied this heavily. There is no data, and our measuring capabilities are certainly good enough to be able to measure this wobble. And we can measure the wobble with objects that are beyond our solar system. No problem. We can see that it takes the constellations of the zodiac actually go counterclockwise, go backwards over a period to take around the whole cycle. But they cannot measure that against the sun and the planets. So all of a sudden, when we try to measure our wobble against the sun, let's say, and if we're wobbling just by ourselves here, there should be no problem measuring that against the sun. We should be going like this, and we can say, oh, the sun is still, and we're wobbling. That's not the case. That can show that. That is a huge problem. Don't work. An alternative, very close to the idea of and they left that encoded at Giza. There's a whole map of this motion of the heavens at Giza, along with there are and they did that using the stone. It's the only thing that could last over a long period of time. So that's the reason it's so large. Very difficult to destroy. Conditions word in another ancient spelling. If you look at the meaning of the word, that form of the term prayer, it is step or coordinate. So that is referring to a coordinate charting system or something. Or chart is. Should, but these words, temple grail, can be read as the template coordinates. So the Earth measure is part of the information that actually includes the dimensions and positions of all the pyramids and all the structures on these plateaus, not just the pyramids. We're talking about the Sphinx, we're talking about the Wall of the Crow, some different structures. This quote here is, no testimony is sufficient to establish the that its falsehood would be more miraculous than the fact which it endeavors to establish. So in other words, if I'm trying to establish some facts, and I put a pile of coincidences in front of them, at what point do you decide this is not coincidence, it has to be a factor, which kind of leads to this quote right here by Carl Sagan: extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So we're going to look at these and demonstrate precisely how the design is put together for Giza. We're going to begin now with this satellite image. It's a Converse satellite image, which I obtained about 10 years after I started my research on this. I had some very good ideas, architecturally speaking, of how this design was put together, using numbers and just logic and common sense. But I kept stumbling because of the survey data that was available to the public. There were several discrepancies. There was a discrepancy about placing the Great Pyramid here. So it was 10 years of almost frustration because I knew I had a mathematically beautiful, logical way that this was done, but it wasn't done with the survey people. Until 2006 when I purchased this Converse satellite image that had very, very high detail down to 4 inches. That building and blueprint design, or a lot more than that, but it's a scaled drawing that we can make to full scale using the software. That is where I started my journey of discovery here in 1997. When I went over with John, I had an idea that, just from an artist's standpoint, if you look here, just proportion, if you're looking at it in this direction, notice that I have north is to our right over here, and east and west. There's a very good reason for that, in that they were tracking the path of the sun, east to west. That was the main point. So when we view this, that's how we're going to look at it. Path of the sun. So what we're doing here is we're looking at a 360-degree panorama from a drone video shot directly in the center. That was the center back in 1997. So now we turned a little bit to our right. We're going clockwise. satellite pyramids down there. These are all reproduced exactly. I'll show you step by step each one of these put there and why they're there. If you look east now, we can see right there's the Sphinx sitting in a carved out space that they actually carved the stone down around the bottom of the Sphinx to expose the body which they carved. This is the Sphinx. It's a very important part of this map, and that goes back to the center point of our temple. Continuing around, there's some other architectural components to this. That one is it's hard to see. It's called the wall. It's just this immense wall. It's like 32 3/4 feet square and about 650 feet long. Massive solid blocks just laid up as a wall. The other temple, Converse, is here. That plays another important role. And we can see here as we're almost around, we can see this causeway here, right here. This is the causeway to the Menkaure, or the third smallest pyramid of the three. Each one of the pyramids has a causeway leading from it. It's just a wide, straight, paved with stone roads. They call them causeways, but we can show here that they're identifying markers. They're pointers, and we'll show you how all that works. But so now we've done a 360-degree circle there. We're looking west again. This is called a plan view, by the way, in architectural terms. It is looking at the, directly above, looking down at the floor plan. So here are all the components. We got the Great Pyramid of Khufu. And I've tried to, if you can take notice, I've tried to help a little bit here color coding things. So we're going to have some different colors for each of the pyramids, plus the numbers are color-coded too, so I'll try to explain that as we go through, just to help you visualize some things. So as I was saying before, there's our Temple of Converse here. Here's the Wall of the Crow. Here's the Great Sphinx. These three satellite pyramids, they call them, and there's also three up here, and there's another small pyramid right here to the left of Khafra. Khafra is the son of Khufu, and Menkaure is the son of Khafra. So this is a multi-generational project that was put together here. Now, I'm not going to get into when was it built and all that. There's a lot of good information, but I think there's a lot of information that is a little bit misleading because certainly we can put a foundation in at one point and then many years later come back and build on it, right? That's not a possibility, and there's really good evidence for that. So we're going to start now the blueprint. What were they trying to do, these designers and architects? What were they trying to encode here, and how are they going to make this design? If we can see here, there's a very interesting geometric equation, if you want to call that tells us, and the Egyptians were very well aware of this, and they used it in a lot of different ways, and actually many cultures use this design right here. If we take this circle and we divide it by 9 in its diameter, so that there are 9 units across the diameter, 1 through 9, okay? We draw a circle.
Neptune's beard.
If we do the math and come up with the area of that circle, and we're not going to do all that, but the answer is the area is 63.6428. That's how much area is in a circle. Now, if we take a square that is of the same area or the same size units, if we go 8 square and make an 8 by 8 square there, the area of that square is 64. So there's a very close relationship to a circle, 9 and square of 8 by 8. And this is also, in many cultures, is a concept of ancient land management. And a lot of cities were actually plotted out using this very method in many different cultures. So this is very common. Now, on our square, we've taken what's called the lambda sequence. The lambda sequence was given to us by Plato in his book Timaeus, and he claimed that God used a sequence of numbers, the lambda sequence, to create the cosmic soul. That was what Plato says. So those numbers are a doubling and tripling sequence. We can see the doubling sequence going down the left-hand side here, which is just, you can see how that doubles as it goes down. And across the top, it triples. It's a tripling sequence. And again, this brings us right back to one of the first things that dawned on me. What do we see at the top corner? We see a 1, a 2, and a 3, all of which are necessary in that particular placement to figure this all out. If we go 7 intervals down, and we go 7 intervals across the top, and we go 7 intervals up, we have a coordinate system there. So here's where we comes in with the grail, the coordinate step position. This is what they were talking about. This, in my opinion, is the grail. So within this scale, we can see there's some interesting numbers come up right off the bat. Let's first look down here. That's 186,624. That's very close to the speed of light in miles per second. Up here, the number 432 is very close to our tuning, what we tune an instrument. So what we're kind of looking at here is frequencies. We can imagine this is sound frequencies. Light is just a very much higher in the frequencies than sound. But we can relate right here very quickly. We can see that this number 432, by the way, was a tuning. We now, that piano over there is tuned to 440. In some of the ancient tunings, they would use 432 hertz. Stradivarius also designed his violins using 432 hertz. There are other composers, very famous composers, Verdi being one of them, that also 432 hertz. If we hear the chant of Abu's chant in Poland, using those sound frequencies, I think we all realize this, that sound and frequencies can have an effect upon us. I think everybody. So there's the very important connection between sound and light. First look at this. But if we now take those intervals and we were divided by interesting that its value, the value between the 432 and the 288 is 144. If we were to divide that by 7, right there, what I just told you is exactly how they came up with the root cubic. And that is so there's two numbers, 288 and a 432. And it's at an angle here. That coordinate there, which is 16 by 21. And that is what Plato gave us as the lambda, 16 and 27. We got 432. And 3, 4, 5 triangle. sides can communicate quite easily because they're all the same. That angle right there is the angle of that first
Proceed to capture that area.
That piano is tuned to a 256 hertz middle. So there's a very close reference to music and measure and light and sound all encoded in this. So we're going to take those two numbers. We're going to place that element of copper right in our sixth position up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And also there's another coordinate on the chart that puts 432 right at the corner. Use a dimension of 288 feet to place that one, and 432 for that one. So now if we look at, I was mentioning these satellite pyramids down here, and I realized that these three pyramids here were marking divisions of our circle. So this is 1/11th of our circle, and this is 1/8th of our circle. So that's showing now how we're putting the circle into play. What we're going to do here is some very basic geometry, and we're going to obtain the angle of the pyramid of Khufu. We've simply done that with our square, and we're going to start over here in the northeast corner. And we're going to swing our compass in the center line, swing that up, then we take our compass and we put it up here, and we measure across to where these two lines run tangent or touch each other. And when we do that, we come up with this division here. That division, if we take and where that line intersects our circle, if we just simply draw a line to the center, that gives us the angle of Khufu. When we do that, this is what's known as the golden cut. And this allows us to divide our square. We're going to now divide that into what's called the golden rectangle. And those ratios that are in a golden rectangle are 1 to 0.618. This is equal 0.618 of this one. So it's a ratio, the phi ratio. And that same dimension there, that same angle also produces, if you want to call it rise over run, in other words, it rises 4 units high, and it goes over here 3.142857 over this way. Now it's very close to pi, 3.14. It's also, that fractional number is also the equivalent of in fraction 22/7, or 22 over 7. The Egyptians were very keen on these two numbers here, by the way. This is basically highlighted all the dimensions. By the three determination of that take much beyond that initial observation. So now, we're looking at different astronomical aspects of Giza. We'll leave the measure stuff behind for a while for another day. But we're going to show here how those 3 belt stars in Orion align our drawing, our design. So with the layout that we have, our 3 pyramids, we could match that now to those 3 belt stars, and it would scale it, and it would be positioned just right so that we can understand how our template works as we are looking at the stars and up against the background of the stars. We're also going to be looking at the Sphinx. The Sphinx is really where these heavens are viewed from. All of this information is going to have one point of view, and that's going to be from the Sphinx, and really it's going to be aligned to a certain date too. We're going to align this like a clock, and the Sphinx is the tool and it's part of the sky that we're going to be aligning to is Leo, the constellation of Leo. And Leo is a constellation of the zodiac constellation, and in particular the star Regulus. Regulus or regulator, constellations actually have relevance to their purpose. Why did they point out these particular stars? So it's the big deal with Regulus. Regulus is the regulator, and you'll be able to see its movement. We're going to track a circle from its point around to see how long it cycles these particular stars at the point. That this movement is doing. We can see here that this is our pyramid, the Great Pyramid. That to show how that is done. That relates to the spiral. That's a Fibonacci spiral that is drawn within our golden rectangle. And we're going to see this diagonal and this diagonal meet. Right here, it's going to be and that square, if we count back on our 8x8 from our northeast corner, and we count back, that is a 26 square. So direction. But now what I want to do is show you where our spiral is. Square is spiral. Now we're also going to see how divisions of the circle work. Beautifully, the geometry works with this spiral. We now see that 7/13 of that circle and 7/13 of our square. And we can see how beautiful that works with the spiral. There's a 7/13, so there's a reason between because it embodies to a degree this Fibonacci. Top or 21st from the bottom. Now, if I go deeper into this, this is all covered in the book. I'll quick skip over this, but if we, using our lambda sequence up here, we can see that the divisions between 21 and 80, or 27 and 81, there's 54 intervals in between 27 and 81. So we're going to divide this row up by 54, and down the side here, there's 32 divisions here in this. So we're going to end up with this square. So within that square, we can see at the center point of it, if we were to multiply 32 by 54, we get 2592. That's a very interesting number if we're familiar with processional numbers, which is 25,920. Just add a 0 to that, we're talking procession. So that is a very accurate positioning of the Sphinx. That's one of the numbers that we're going to use to position the Sphinx and associate the Sphinx with procession. So if we look, going from 0 degrees over here, if we go around, that is 259.20 degrees right there, and it intersects. That's how we place our Sphinx, position the Sphinx. Again, here's our our angle and our spiral. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you something. I don't want to get, again, too involved in it, but it's so unbelievable. I have a hard time sometimes getting my own head around it. But this is what I'm showing here is like the tilt of the Earth is at a 23.5 degree angle. So if we draw a 23.5 degree angle there, and we go all the way across the circle with it. To keep it simple, if we took a string and we laid it around that edge so that it was just long enough to where it stopped right there, and then we did the same thing with this spiral. If we took a string and we measured from where it starts here and took that string and cut it there, and then we took that string and we moved it back to the center line of our circle, and we laid that string there. The string length comes to this point, which is 259.2 degrees. It's pretty amazing. There's a lot more. It goes way deeper than what I'm showing here, but this is really significant for anyone who's ever wondered why is our Earth tilting at 23.5 degrees. Well, there's some really interesting science behind all this. This is our satellite image. Again, showing you right there how that all works and lines up the Sphinx. And if we look in closer, this is just a zoomed in view of our 21st square. And if we notice that when we divide that by 4, our center number is 2592, which is alluding to processional and processional number. It's also, if you add up the number of squares in each one of these quarters, there's 432 squares in each one of those corners, which brings us back to our original 432 number. The actual divisions of the square were used to determine the length and width of the Sphinx and position it. Now, also, too, there's a longitude here. This is all very precisely placed at Giza, too. The speed of light is actually encoded in the latitude of the Great Pyramid. I won't get into that too much in this, but that's somewhere I have it either on a podcast or somewhere you can see all that explained. This great year of 25,920 years, if we divide that by 5, we get 5180.
The date is being given by the Illuminati to trap the New Age people, to trap them into believing they have to prepare for this date so they're caught totally unawares by what's going to happen in the next 2 months. There's a little comet called Elenin. Every time this little comet is in alignment with our planet and either the sun or some other body, there's a major earthquake. Now, vibrational harmonics work such that if they directly line up, you get an amplification of energy. February 27th, 2010, this little comet was in a direct alignment between the Earth and the sun. On that date, there was an earthquake in Chile. That's just a coincidence, isn't it? Well, there was another coincidence, because when the Earth came around the other side here, and the Earth was in alignment, and then the comet was a little bit closer, but they're in alignment again, and that was September 4th, 2010, there was an earthquake in Christchurch. And then the Earth came back round again, and then the next time it was in alignment with the Sun, and now this is closer, March 11th, there's an earthquake in Japan. Once is a coincidence, twice is pushing it, 3 times, wait a minute, something's going on here. The other one that will happen is August 17th. I've gone publicly on this one because there is an alignment between the Earth, Venus, the Sun and Mercury. They're in a straight line and Nibiru is at right angles to the Sun. At August the 17th, I'm being told there's going to be a massive earthquake on the planet. It will probably be somewhere between Alaska and San Francisco. The next alignment happens on September 26th this year, and it is between us and the Sun. And at that point, it is 0.38 away from us. When it was 2 away, we had a magnitude 9 earthquake. The gravitational forces, the infrared forces, they're all 25 times greater on that day. The whole Pacific Rim will go with magnitude 12 to 15 earthquakes. New Zealand will disappear, Japan will disappear, Indonesia will disappear, China will disappear, Korea will disappear, Russia will disappear, the west coast of America will disappear, the whole lot. East coast of Australia will not be affected by the earthquakes per se, but they will be affected by the tidal waves that come from it. There is going to be a cosmic sonic shockwave that will totally blow out our Van Allen belts and our magnetic fields and will leave the planet totally open to gamma radiation. If you are out in the open at that point, you will literally be fried alive. It's like the vampire jumping out into the light. That's what's going to happen. When this object goes across the sky, it's going to cause an eclipse that will last at least 3 days. So you're going to have all these volcanoes going on, pyroclastic blasts going everywhere, level 12, 13 magnitude earthquakes. The electromagnetic pulses are going to fry all electrics. You're going to have wind speeds over 1,000 miles an hour. You're going to have surface temperatures of 60 degrees plus. All the water surfaces are going to dry up. The volcanic ash is going to cause huge amounts of acid rain. There will be wildfires all over the planet. And they're saying nothing about this. I do get channeled information through, but if I can't confirm it with scientific stuff, I'm not going to put it out there. If people ask me, I'll say, well, look, that's what I'm told, but it's up to you. Everything that we tell you tonight, do not believe a single word that I tell you. Because if you believe what people tell you, you're a fool. But don't disbelieve what I tell you. Because if you do disbelieve, you're a cynic. Not a skeptic, a cynic. So have an open mind on the information. Some of the information will be scientific data. It stands on its own for what it is. Some of it is historical information that comes from the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Sumerians, who are documenting what's happening. And some of it is information that's come through to me. It's like the glue that puts it all together. And you don't have to believe it. Some of the stuff that I'll tell you, you'll be aware of. Some of it you won't be aware of. Some of it will be a totally different perspective. And you are not obliged to take it on board. Some of what we tell you will absolutely scare the shit out of you, the implications of it. And if there is anyone who walks out of here without having experienced some point tonight where they don't go, oh shit, I would be very surprised. Because you have to go through it to understand. But what I want you to trust more than anything else is what resonates within you. When you hear something, if it suddenly get that thing up the spine thing, that instantaneous reaction is your truth. You may then click into a whole lot of blocking and fear patterns after that, And that's okay too. And that's where Crystal will weave her magic to help you work through
Concentrate
that
fire
stuff.
on the designated target.
Okay, so let's get a little bit into this. What are we talking about? I'm going to go through a little bit of metaphysics and a little bit of astrophysics. I'm not going to try to go too deep into it. The objective of this is not for me to give you everything on a platter. It's to give you the points where you can go and research it for yourself. I'm going to give you the core, and then you can go and look up the links that I've given you and formulate your own opinions on stuff. So a little bit of metaphysics first. How many of you are aware of Drunvalo Melchizedek? Okay, about half. Amazing man, he's very, very aware, and he has a book called The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, and I've listed it there. It's a book that every person should have in their library, whether they believe or don't. Whether they're spiritual or non-spiritual, religious, non-religious, scientific, non-scientific, because he covers everything. And in particular, what he covers is how the universe came into being. Now, this whole universe that we live in is just a thought construct. It's not a reality, it's a perceived reality. And it's just a thought. Just like you have a thought and it's real to you, Source decided, you know what?
Be golden for it.
This is me. I'm a sphere of what I know. Everything that I know is contained in this sphere. But I haven't experienced everything that I know. So do I really know it? It's like so many people go, oh yeah, I know that, I know that. They haven't experienced it, but they're intellectualizing that they know it. But it's only once you've truly experienced something. Like no man knows what childbirth's like. They can say, oh yeah, I know it. Oh yeah, I know it because I've seen my wife give birth. You know, I've seen all those sorts of things. So I know what childbirth's about. Can you imagine a man saying to a woman, yeah, I know what childbirth's like? What's a woman going to look at him and go, get real? You have to experience it to know what it's like. And that's what we're talking about here. So Source said, I'm going to project myself to the edge of myself and duplicate what I do. Now I've created his source, and we all know the source of everything is just love. It's a state of being. It's not something that you can give to someone. It's not something that you can get back. So when anyone says, I'm giving you love, or I love you, or I get love from this person, you don't. Love is a state of being. That's all it is. And it's a wondrous state, and it's not dependent on anyone else. So Source says, let's shift over here to be everything that I'm not. So we're going to have the absence of love. And then it oscillates backwards and forwards between these two things, creating contrast, creating conflict. And in moving here, which is a straight line, it creates this shape, which is like a bow, which scientists have realised is what light is shaped like. It's called a vesica. But they've worked out that light has this shape. And it sort of fluidly goes backwards and forwards. Because when God said, let's let it be light, that was the first movement. This directional thing to here creates a there, creates the duality. That's where the duality came from. From being it also, in going from here to there, takes. So the second, the first dimension is the singularity, which we've all heard about, the void, the singularity. The second dimension is
the
time.
ship is on fire.
And in going from here to there and backwards and forwards, creates an oscillation, which is vibration. And that's why everything in this entire universe is just a vibration. Everything. The frequency is shift. That's why we've got light, sound, and subatomic physics. They have different frequencies, but all they are is vibration. So here we've got the first part of everything. Here's the next stuff. The absence of love generates fear. Fear is absolutely essential for Source to be able to have a mirror of itself. It cannot experience itself without the mirror of itself, which is fear. That's why fears are so important. That's why we should not suppress them. That's why we should not bury them. We should embrace them, because they are there to reflect our consciousness. If you don't have eyes, you can't see light reflecting off the walls. You have no feedback. If you have no ears, you can't hear. Therefore, you have no feedback on your consciousness. You put somebody in one of those sensory deprivation tanks, deprive them of light, sound, and all of those things, and they go into a totally altered state of consciousness because they have no reflection back. So that the perception that we have now is because of these fears that we have. That's one of the things that gives us our consciousness.
The ship is on fire!
So the next thing that happens is Source, that was great. Source did that for an amount of time and then went, okay, I've explored all the options in that. I've gone slowly from here to there. All the different vibrational energies. What do I do next? Go along the edge here. Now we've got which is why absolutely everything in this universe there is no such thing as stillness.
Victory is in sight.
So everybody who's trying to still their mind, do all of this, going against the universe,
Battleship destroyed.
You're not meant to have a still mind. You're meant to have a flowing mind. And so many of the light workers, and please don't be offended by anything I say. And if you do get offended, maybe it's triggering a truth. Because only the truths cause us to react a certain way. If you try to bring anything into balance, you are trying to stagnate energy. You are trying to pull it so it does not move. Balance is stagnation. There is no such thing as balance in the universe. The key word is flow. You do not want your life in balance, because you're spending all of this energy trying to pull it into stagnation, and the whole power of the universe is going to go damaged and knock you off balance all the time. So you just fight harder and harder and harder to bring your life into balance. Doesn't happen. Can't do it. Source won't have it. You bring it into flow. Now that's different. And here's an image for you. I'm in the middle of a river. I'm swimming against the current so I can stay exactly where I'm meant to be. I'm trying to stay balanced. I'm using all of my energy and I'm getting nowhere. But the minute I stop doing that, I go with the flow. And that's where the fear kicks in, because where am I going? I don't know where I'm going. Well, you're going somewhere new and exciting. That's what Source wants. That's why Source moved. Because it wants new stuff to happen. And it creates rotating energy. And in doing that, it creates the third dimension. So that's a little bit of metaphysics to go into stuff. So the key aspect here is this rotational energy aspect. Because the next thing we're going to go into is a little bit of astrophysics. All of the physical aspects of the universe fall down to simple mathematical things. Is everybody familiar with the Fibonacci spiral? Okay, for those of you who aren't, it's pretty simple. You take the number 1 and you add it to another 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. 5 plus 8 is 13. 21, 34, and on and on and on and on and on ad infinitum. You'll see it everywhere in nature. Trees create branches based on this, and flower petals based on this. And the great thing is, if you take these two numbers and you divide, you get 2 by 1 is 2. 2 and 3 in divide is 1.5. The halfway measure in here keeps getting closer and closer and closer to 1.618, which is what they call the golden mean, or pi. Absolutely everything in the universe is based on this. The length of this part of my finger to that is 1 to 1.6. The length of this part of my finger to that finger is 1 to 1.6. The length of this to this is 1 to 1.6. This to this, 1 to 1.6. It's everywhere. It's a universal rule. Back with that other figure that we had here, this figure keeps going around and it does the same things over and over again. Creates another thing around here. And eventually, it forms a symbol that is known as the flower of life. In this, all of these are feminine. Everything that is a curve is feminine energy, okay? But if I take the center and I connect it to another one here, I get a straight line. And if I take the center here and connect it to another one, I get a straight line. When you do all of the straight lines and connect up here, they're all masculine energies. You create every single subatomic crystalline structure that everything is built on. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Every part of your body is in here. And there's a thing called Metronon's cube, and that's, I'm flying through this stuff because you can grab the book if you're more interested in it, but it gives you some background into what we're going on. Here's an interesting thing. This image has been found various places around the world. In particular, there's a temple in Egypt in Abydos, and this temple is over 100,000 years old, and it sits behind the temple of Seti. And the Egyptologists tell you that they dug this temple 50 feet into the ground and then put these massive red granite blocks in there. Yeah, that really makes sense, that you would dig it underground and then put the blocks in. What does make sense is it was built and then at some time some massive tsunami came over and covered it up to the hilt. And then they built another temple on the ground beside it because they knew it was there. But this temple's been excavated, and if you get the chance to go to Egypt, you have to go there. It's extraordinary. There's no hieroglyphics on any of the major big red granite blocks in temples. None. And there's a reason for that. I'm not going to go into it, but if you're interested in Egypt, I can go into it. But what is interesting is this symbol is on these blocks. It's not painted on. It's not drawn on. It's not carved on. It is laser etched into the stone. Laser etched into the stone. And it's over 100,000 years old. We do not have lasers today that can do that. But there it is. It's there, and it's the only symbol, this flower of life, which contains all of the structure of everything. So let's go to the formation of our solar system, because we've got to sort of find out what 2012 and all this stuff's about. The background information will become more relevant as we go through stuff. So I just need to get it all away. That's the hard stuff. That's the brain-teasing stuff. From here on, it's easy. When our solar system was forming, all of the cosmic dust and everything starts spinning because everything's rotational energy. So it all starts rotating. And have you ever wondered why scientists can't explain gravity? They can tell you what it does and the effects of it, but they can't explain it. Because everything in this universe comes from source, right? Can we accept that as a given? Everything comes from source? Everything comes from source down. Highest vibration, lowest density. Okay. Highest vibration, lowest density. Down to lowest vibration, highest density. Now, density is just how many molecules you can cram into a little bit of space. Now, the interesting thing about that is, because everything is just this continuum of vibration, look around. All you're seeing is slowed down light. Every person you look at is just slowed down light. Slowed down through all sorts of different frequencies, slowed down through sound.
Penetration.
Sound is slowed down light.
Down light.
You, matter, is just slowed down sound into a higher density.
Enemy cruiser sighted.
So when the sun was first forming, it wasn't gravity pulling everything together, it was actually things being compressed from outside. It was consciousness compressing down and slowing down vibration. That's why scientists can't explain gravity, because they think it's a pulling thing, and it's not. It's a compression thing. So here we've got all of our little dust, cosmic bits and pieces and hydrogen atoms and all those things, all being compressed down so it can form a level of consciousness. Because there's like tram stops along the way here, and we can give them names. We can call it 11th density, or 9th dimension, or 7th dimension, or 5th dimension, until we get down to 3rd dimension. It's just a label. And I'll give you an example. If I play a G string on a guitar and my ears can only hear G, nothing else, and then I tune that guitar string up to a G sharp, when I play it, I can't hear it. It doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. That sound doesn't exist because I can't hear it. That's why people say, I don't believe in fifth dimensional beings, because I've never seen one. Because you can only see with your eyes in a light spectrum that's this big. Can anyone here see infrared? Can anyone here see ultraviolet? Well, we know they exist. We can't see them because our measuring device doesn't have it. So here's all of these atoms compressing down to form our sun, and they're spinning. Whenever you have a fluid that is spinning,
Enemy heavily damaged.
it moves around. And remember, no balance in the universe. Don't want balance. So it's out of balance. So as it's spinning, it's out of balance, and it wants to try and balance it the same way that Fibonacci spiral is getting closer and closer and closer to 1.618 but never gets there. It's trying to balance itself. So this little bit that's on the side here starts to move apart and eventually gets thrown off. And this part comes more into balance and eventually ignites and forms our sun. But as it's spinning, it forms a galactic plane of dust. I'm going to sort of draw this as best I can. Like a CD that sort of radiates out. Has anyone seen what happens when you vibrate something with sand on top of it, like a disc, how it forms rings? Have you ever looked at the rings of Saturn? What they are is they're harmonic nodes. Whatever the frequency is from here, it creates nodes.
The ship is
And
on
those
fire.
node points are where things will start to form. So there is a real mathematics, and you can look this up as well, as to where planets will form around an object. So our solar system, while it's forming our sun, is also forming
Problem solved, sir.
through rotational energy and vibration. Here's one of the interesting things. Here's the Earth. The Earth does not sit on the Earth was not an original planet of this solar system. We'll go into a little bit of the metaphysics later in terms of the tetrahedron. Does everyone know the tetrahedral structures and vibrations? It's one of the very first levels of vibrational consciousness, and the Earth has that structure. But Jupiter and Saturn have much more complex sacred geometries about them. If you look at Saturn from the top, the clouds form a hexagon shape. It has a different vibrational energy because it's one of the original planets in the solar system. So just remember that for the moment, that here's the Earth sitting somewhere that isn't a natural harmonic within the thing. So it wasn't part of our original plan. So we've got to think, well, where did it come from then? Which we'll get to. So we'll add another ring out here. So we've got Mars, and then we've got Jupiter, but in between we've got the asteroid belt, okay? In the meantime, this little bit of cosmic plasma that was thrown off from the sun goes off here, and it does the same thing. It starts to form its own little circle, and it forms its own little planets around it. But this one doesn't have enough mass to ignite the way the sun does. So what it forms is something that's called a brown dwarf. Brown dwarf star. Now here's something that I don't know if anyone saw this the other day, but there was an article on the internet where scientists are starting to think now that maybe our solar system might have a dwarf star. Because every single solar system they have ever discovered is at least a binary system. Some have 3 stars. Every single solar system is at least a binary star. So now they're coming out saying, well, there's a possibility that we may have a brown dwarf star. This is the way the Illuminati work. Get the information through the back door so you don't really know what's going on. Most of us have been aware of Nibiru, whatever you want to call it, the destroyer, Planet X for ages. How did it come about? Up until the beginning of the last century, I think it was 1927, we could see Saturn. That was as far as we could see Saturn. And when they started analysing Saturn's orbit, they realised there was something of bigger mass outside of Saturn that was pulling it out of its regular orbit. So they punched the figures into a computer when the computers came around, or they calculated, whatever they did, and they found Neptune. They went, yay, that's it, we found it. And when they analysed Neptune's orbit, they went, oh, there's something else. It's pulling Neptune around. So they did their calculations again. Lo and behold, they discovered, found Uranus first. And then they found Neptune. So they thought, that's it, we've solved the problem. And then they analysed Neptune's orbit. There must be something bigger outside of that, because it's being pulled out of orbit by something else. And then they found Pluto. Well, Pluto's not good. That's not good. So they then said, there must be something bigger outside of Pluto that is pulling it out. It's got to be massive. And in 1983, NASA announced outside of the solar system, which belongs to this star. It's not from somewhere else. It has an orbit.
Enemy cruiser destroyed.
Because everything revolves around it. Because this came from our sun. It has an orbit around our sun. Are they telling us this? No. Why not? Why wouldn't they tell us this? So now we know that these things happen. So if we look at all of the planets are on what we call a planetary equator thing. So everyone thinks this is what happens. Here's the sun, and then you go out in a line and you've got Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter. Is that what everyone thinks? That they're all nice? Because guess what? These planets are actually all pulled orbits, all sort of go off that way from the galactic, because they've all been pulled by out of this normal orbit where they started. So this thing's going through backwards and forwards. It's got a number of planets the size of Jupiter around it. And at some time in the past, because it cuts through here, one of the planets from here collided with a planet that used to be where the asteroid belt was. The bulk of it kept going off around this sun and reformed. But part of it went crashing off this rotating bit of molten rock, and the leftovers stayed in where the... That seems pretty simple, doesn't it? Scientists telling you that? No. Why are they not telling you that? Because they don't want you to know. They can scare us, so we won't tell you that. In the meantime, the bit that was the Earth does exactly the same thing. It's out of balance, it's a rotating fluid because it's molten rock, and in trying to balance itself, it creates a little bulge and it throws it off. The moon used to be part of the Earth, of this molten bit. How do we know that? What proof do we have of that? Well, when they examined the moon rocks, they were exactly the same as the Earth. That's a pretty good start. The other thing is, the moon is pulling away from the Earth 3 centimetres a year. So if it's pulling away 3 centimetres a year, you only have to go back and back and back, and there was a time when the two of them were together. It's pretty simple, and it was about 4 to 5 billion years ago, if you do the simple maths. But there's one more piece of evidence. When you have two objects that rotate around one another, they have what's called a centre of gravity. Okay, it's the central point at which they rotate around. The centre of gravity of these two objects is about 3,000 kilometres inside the crust of the Earth. The only way that could happen would be if the two objects were once one. So why is that relevant? Why am I telling you that? Is that part of what's going on here? Yeah, it is, because what was left on the Earth was a scar, the land bridge, the bump where it used to connect. Has anyone heard of Pangaea? Pangaea was the original one continent. Because remember they say how it was one continent and it all broke up? Did they ever tell you how it broke up or why it broke up? Or how it formed in the first place? No. Why not? Because if you start getting the answers to those questions, you'll go deeper. Well, I'm going to tell you, because you have a right to know. We've got this one landmass here, and the moon is out here, but for now I'm going to put it over here. Where does the water go on the planet? Where does our water go? Lots of places? The water, that's a really interesting question. The water goes lots of places. It actually doesn't. What determines where the water goes? The moon. The gravity of the moon pulls all the water to here and it balances on the other side. It's pulled to the moon, so the water stays exactly where it is. So what causes the tides? No. What causes tides on planet Earth? Because the water stays exactly pulled to the moon. The rotation of the Earth causes the tides. Okay, because the Earth rotates underneath it. The water doesn't move, the Earth's moving. Originally they used to do it together. But over time, because the moon was pulling away, it started to lag behind. The further it got away, the more it lagged behind. So we think the moon is rotating around the Earth, when in actual fact the moon is lagging behind the Earth's rotation, but all the water is staying exactly where it is with the moon. Important for you to know that for what's going to happen down the track. Okay. If you have a question at any time, please fire it at me. So we've got this one continent. So here's the Earth going through space, and it's got now the moon's pulled away from it. What causes the Earth to try to balance itself now?
General quarters.
What's going to have enough gravitational force to pull this crust apart enough so that the Earth can balance. Because the crust of our planet, you know when we see a steel mill and they're milling the steel and you get this stuff on top of it called slag, which is sort of a crust that forms on the molten metal. That molten metal is caused by the light impurities hitting the cooler air. And that slag is exactly what the crust of our planet is. Because what's the core of our planet? Molten metal. So the outside of it is just a crusty slag. But originally, it was just one mass. So what caused it to break up? Anyone have any thoughts? The brown dwarf star. Because what's the brown dwarf star got? Massive gravity. Okay? Now, the brown dwarf star could be anything from 1/3 the size of the sun to 1/2 the size of the sun. Okay? In comparison, if this is our sun, a brown dwarf's probably about that big, and the Earth's about that big. So it's big. And it has massive gravitational pull. It also throws out huge amounts of infrared heat. Now you can't see it with a visible eye because it doesn't throw off visible light because it didn't have enough mass to ignite. But it throws off huge amounts of infrared heat. Starting to think what the real cause of global warming might be? Because guess what? About 2.5, 3 years ago, scientists made an extraordinary discovery. Neptune, which used to rotate like this, had been pulled over on its side and was now rotating that way. They didn't know why. What would cause a planet to be pulled over on its side? Maybe a little brown dwarf? Perhaps, that was coming close to it. Beginning of 2009, we come in a little bit closer, we get to Saturn. And Saturn suddenly has 12 months of extraordinary electronic storms that have never existed before. Every time you come here, they've found every single planet in our solar system is heating up, is having extraordinary storms going on them. There are storms raging on Jupiter at the moment. Mars is heating up. Earth's heating up. Now, I was in Los Angeles and I met a woman who was an expert in global warming. She did PhDs on it and everything. So I said to her, fantastic, you can answer some questions that really bother me. She said, no problems. I said, our polar caps are melting, right? She said, yes. It's because of what we're doing to the atmosphere. She said, yes. I said, right, so it's all the polar ice that's melting because the air's heating up. Yes. So let's go to the North Pole. Because the North Pole is a giant iceberg. 10% of it is above water and 90% of it's below. But it's the 10% above that's melting, right? That's what we're seeing because of what we're doing to the air. She said, yes. I said, see, I'm no expert, but what's the air temperature at the North Pole? 30 degrees below freezing. So how does the ice that's in below freezing melt because of the air? She went, well, I said, well, hang on, let's go to the South Pole, because the South Pole's a continent, okay? And they have a glacier there which is 1 mile thick, and there's more snow falling at the South Pole than ever before. And they are so concerned that that glacier will slip off the continent. Have you heard that concern? They're totally scared that that whole glacier is going to fall off. Do you know why? Because of the water underneath the glacier acting like a lubricant. So it's not the top of the South Pole that's melting, because guess what the air temperature is at the South Pole? -70. It's 1 mile below, away from the atmosphere, where it's melting. It's melting in contact with the continent. So can you explain to me why that's melting? I said, can you explain to me why every single planet in our solar system is heating up cooler? Because I'm sure we don't have human civilizations on that causing greenhouse gases. She said, where are you getting all this information from? I went, you're the expert. Surely you've done all the research, because I'm getting that from NASA, from independent scientists. She walked away. Didn't want to know. No, you're a fool. You're an idiot. I said, okay. She prided herself on being an expert of something, and she had ignored the evidence that contradicted what she was saying. And we find this a lot with our academics. So there we've got some object that's causing all of these things to happen, global warming. So what evidence do we have that this has happened before? That this thing has come through, and it's... Because when it comes close here to the continent, it pulls the continent apart and it causes fractures, and Mother Earth wants to try and balance herself, so these things move. That's what causes continental drift. Ask a scientist what causes continental drift, and they'll tell you, well, the tectonic plates are moving because of the lava. And I said, no, that's what's happening, but what's causing it? And they go, well, the plates move because they move. This is the reason. They break up and balance itself. How often does this brown dwarf star come through? Do we have any record of the last time it was here? Well, we do. Because the ancient Egyptians wrote about a pole shift. Because guess what happens? This crust gets pulled loose from the water. When it's attached, we've got a North Pole and a South Pole. It's pretty simple. When the crust gets pulled loose from the core, this very, very thin pole and very, very massive North Pole under.
The ship is on fire.
Does anyone know what happens when two lights?
Problem solved, sir.
Push hard.
Ship is on fire.
So, what's the crust? And what happens is it literally turns upside down. So the crust of our planet will turn totally upside down. If you ask the scientists to explain a pole shift, they make it sound like that the north and south just change, that there's no big deal about it. But all the evidence, do you remember when they found the mammoths that used to live in temperate zones and they found them frozen solid with food still in their mouths? Because in the space of an hour they went from a temperate zone to subarctic temperatures. Because this shift happens over a couple of hours. That's how fast it happens. Now here's the thing. If you are on the equator part here, if you're here and the shift happens, all hell breaks loose. Because apart from all the earthquakes and everything that go on, the water stays where it is and the planet rotates underneath. So you think there's a tidal wave coming to you when in fact you're moving under the water at 1,000 miles an hour. But if you're here at the pivot point, you do this over 3 hours. So if you're in a pivot point, you're not going to notice anything other than the sky's going to turn around. And when you read the ancient Egyptian texts, they tell about the sky turning around, the sun rising in the west and setting in the east. They describe a total pole shift. So do the ancient Sumerians. So do the ancient Mayans. So when was the last one? The last one was 1600 BC. That was when the last total pole shift happened. There have been two others since then. There was one in There's one in 5200 BC. There was one in 8800 BC. So this is from scientific. They measure it because they measure it from the lava that's laid down. When fresh lava is laid down, as it solidifies with the magnetic field in it. That's how they can tell when these things happen. So the last one that the Egyptians and everyone talk about was 1600 BC. Now we start to ask, well, when's the next one due? Because this thing has an orbit of around about 3,600 years. So 1600 BC, 3,600 years, smack bang now. Smack bang now. So we know what happens with a pole shift. It pulls the crust apart, it has huge magnetic forces, it has all of this infrared heat going on. What's happening on the planet at the moment?
Alle Stationen,
More than
Feuer auf
usual,
das
bigger
Ziel
than usual.
konzentrieren.
Volcanoes are going off. There's
Alle
some change in the
Stationen,
temperature
melde
because of
Position
the
eines
heat.
strategischen
Everything
Ziels.
that are preliminary signs of pole shift. So is there any evidence or actual physical evidence? There is. Now,
J'ai besoin d'un appui. Affirmatif.
you all know who NASA is. They're the guys who've lied to you about so many things over the years.
Ich brauche Aufklärung.
The whole Apollo program was just a cover-up because NASA has been on the moon since 1959. You all aware of that? Been on the moon since 1959. John F. Kennedy found out about it, was going to tell the world, and they went, no, you're going to tell anyone. Boom. Do you know who shot John F. Kennedy, by the way? Would you believe the driver of the car? The first bullet came through and hit him in the back, but the one that blew his head apart was the driver of the car, and you can see it in the footage. Not the footage they originally showed you, which cut the driver out of it. But the original footage that has the driver in it shows this trained secret security guy take his left hand off, put it under his hand like that, and at that moment, Kennedy's head gets blown off and he turns back. You can find that out for yourself. That's just Illuminati. That's the little Bible before you just throw in there. So, do we have any proof? Well, in 1983, they discovered this brown dwarf, and then they discovered it because in 1983 they put up IRIS, the infrared satellite. 9 months after they put IRIS up, they announced that they had found this brown dwarf, and 2 days later they denied it. No, we didn't find anything. They covered the whole thing up straight away. But the cat was out of the bag because they'd already made the announcement. In 1992, they put up, I think it was 2 more infrared satellites. From 2002 to 2009, they put up another 7 infrared satellites. They spent billions of dollars fixing the Hubble telescope because it was broken.
Enemy destroyer detected.
Turned it into an infrared telescope. Suddenly, there's all this interest in infrared telescopes. They even built one at the South Pole. Why would you build one at the South Pole? Well, it just so happens, it's on the south. No, I'm doing it upside down from where it was before. But the orbit of this thing is the best place to view it is from the South Pole.
We've
They
sunk
say
an
it's
enemy
because the air is
destroyer.
clear there. But they rushed to build this thing. They rushed to build it. So suddenly they've put all of these infrared satellites up.
Concentrate fire on the enemy warships.
So what are they focusing on? What are they actually looking at? Interestingly enough, there's a little comet called Elenin. Now, according to NASA, this was discovered by a Russian amateur astronomer, and you can even find a page about information about him. And he discovered this tiny little comet which has an orbit, strangely enough, comes in and around the Sun, and then there's the orbit of Mercury, Venus, and Mars. I did a little bit of checking with some colleagues of mine in LA, closely connected in his past and present observe, very connected in through the CIA. And I asked him about this element discovered by Leonid Elenin. And I said, what's the story? He said, he doesn't exist. He said, it's not a comet. But it's coming from the constellation. The whole project is under the overview. Elenin is an acronym for extinction level event near.
The ship is on fire!
Whoa! Smoking gun here. But I want more proof because they say it's a comet. Now, a comet is made of dust, dirt, and ice. Okay? It doesn't have an infrared.
The ship is on fire!
Okay? And it doesn't have a huge gravitational field. It's just a chunk of dust and ice. So why have they got infrared satellites tracking it? Why are they using their most expensive infrared satellites tracking a dust and ice? That doesn't add up to me. That doesn't make sense. Also, do you remember when Comet Kohoutek came through and Comet Halley came through? And whenever there was a comet coming through, NASA are jumping up and down saying, you've got to see it, it's going to look fantastic. It's going to be across the sky, and there was all of this hype about comets, 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 comets. Heard anything from NASA about Elenin? Because guess what? At its closest point to the Earth, it's only 21 million miles away. That's 1/5 the distance between us and the Sun. Most of the other comets that they've talked about have been out here somewhere. 400, 500 million miles away. And they were jumping up and down. And they're saying nothing about this? That doesn't add up to me. Doesn't add up. Something doesn't add up. But I'm still not thinking they're lying to us much. Maybe. So then I started looking, and there was a coincidence, because in, I'll get my dates right, it was February 27th, and you may have this on your list. February 27th, 2010, this little comet was in a direct alignment between the Earth and the Sun. Direct alignment. Now, vibrational harmonics work such that if they directly line up, you get an amplification of energy. So gravitational waves are no difference to that. If they line up, the gravitational waves amplify. So on that date, there was an earthquake in Chile of, it was huge, 9 point something or other. That's just a coincidence, isn't it? That this little comet is in directly line with the Earth and the Sun, and there's a massive earthquake on it. That's just a coincidence. Well, there was another coincidence, because when the Earth came around the other side here, and the Earth was in alignment, and then the comet was a little bit closer, but they're in alignment again, and that was September 4th, 2010. There was an earthquake in Christchurch. That was just another coincidence, by the way. Two coincidences. And then the Earth came back round again, and then the next time it was in alignment with the Sun, and now this is closer, March 11th, there's an earthquake in Japan. Once is a coincidence, twice is pushing it, 3 times, wait a minute, something's going on here. And on there you will see a list of every time this little comet is in alignment with our planet and either the Sun or some other body, there's a major earthquake. No way could that be a comet. All of those alignments, earthquake, 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 all the changes that are going on, is a smoking gun. But do we have any other proof? Because I'm not trying to convince you here, I'm just saying
I owe you one.
I'm having questions about this. Are you all aware of Google Earth? That you can punch in any address and bang, you can see it. Are you also aware that there are certain areas, because NASA controls Google Earth? Did we say who NASA are, by the way? You know they're not a US department. They're a private company. And NASA came from Nazi Germany. All the guys that built all the rockets, they were all from Nazi Germany. Because NASA is owned by the Illuminati. Okay? So NASA have an agenda. Okay? So when we go to Google Earth, try and have a look at Area 51. Why not? Okay? Because it's blacked out, isn't it? It's censored. Okay? Because they don't want you to know what's going on there. So they censor it. They put a big black square on it. Yeah. Anywhere they don't want you to know what's there, they put your big black square. Look. Yeah, tried to discredit him. So many people have had accidents. Yeah. So that's Google Earth. Are you aware of Google Sky? Google Sky is run by, guess who? NASA. And they plug into all of their satellites. So you can go into Google Sky and you can look at the whole sky as it is right now. So when I say this to you, go to Google Sky and have a look at the constellation of Leo. No, it's not blacked out. Okay? When you look at it, there's nothing untoward about it. Then go to the little right-hand corner and shift up in the infrared spectrum. And as you shift it to the infrared spectrum, suddenly it
Enemy
appears...
severely damaged.
The winged destroyer, the ancient Egyptians talked about, is at the ground. In the constellation of Leo. Because they think that most of us are absolutely stupid and wouldn't even bother looking. And they just fog it off left, right and centre. The interesting thing is though, if you go into the constellation of Virgo and have a look, there's a big black square in the constellation of Virgo. And you can see something coming out from behind it, which is a binary star system. Now, this might sound bizarre, but the reason they're blacking that out is because there are things coming from that star system. Visitors.
Is there two star systems that are alive and running?
But it's a binary system. Oh, no, we're talking about Nibiru. Nibiru and the Anunnaki, which is a whole other thing. Orion's belt. It's in the... Can anyone remember the constellation? I can't remember it. It's in the constellation of Orion. I'll give you a little interesting fact about that. Those of you who have read the books of Baval and West, who say that Orion is the copy of the stars in the sky, that when you see the pyramids on the ground in Giza, okay, and you're spot on because they're a mirror image. They're not a copy of it. They're a mirror image. And the Egyptians don't work that way. So the only way that those could match up would be if the pyramids were built when the Earth was up the other way. So the pyramids were built before the last pole shift. pretty simple. It's like, oh, right. Here's another thing. The Sphinx used to have a lion's head. And if you knew that something was going to happen on a particular date in your calendar, what would you do?
All stations.
You'd
Reporting
mark
position of strategic target.
ahead of schedule, mark it. Well, they knew thousands of years ahead that something was going to come from the constellation of Leo at that time when it lines up there. So the Sphinx wasn't built at the time that it lines up. It was built way before it as a warning to say when this lines up in the constellation of Leo, that's when the shit's going to hit the fan. That's the last portion. Yep.
It's blacked out.
Oh yeah.
But why
Yeah.
don't they questioning something that's blacked out?
Because we're stupid. And we're not even going to look at that. Yeah. Exactly. And not just discredit you. If they just don't want you, and if they discredit you enough, make it difficult enough, then you'll give up. Okay, there are pyramids off the coast of Japan, there are pyramids in China. They're all built around the 19.5 degree mark. And there's a reason for that. Okay, there's a reason for that because that diagram I showed you of the flower of life creates what they call geometric solids, the sacred geometries. And when you create a tetrahedron, it looks like the Star of David, but imagine the three dimensions. And when they fit inside a sphere, the points where these touch are 9.5. So they're energy units. Every single religion has been created by the
The ship is on fire.
every single religion,
Problem
including
solved, sir.
New Age. Including New Age. We'll get to that in the second half. It's a great question. It's one that might shock you a little bit, but we'll work through it. So here's this body coming through. We've got a brown dwarf coming through. The evidence is overwhelming. They're trying to hide it. They don't want to talk about it. What we want to know is, okay, we know the impact.
Ship is on fire.
But how big and what's the time frame? If we track through Eleanor, you will notice that on August 17th, I've gone publicly on this one, because there was an alignment between the Earth, Venus, the Sun, and Mercury. They were in a straight line, and Nibiru was at right angles to the Sun. At August the 17th, I'm being told there's going to be a massive earthquake on the planet. It will probably be somewhere between Alaska and San Francisco, and I got told this last year it was going to be Seattle. They told me there was going to be a major earthquake around Seattle in Thank you. So August 17 is another sign that something's going to happen. Well, let's go a little bit further through, because when the Japan earthquake
The enemy
happened,
team has taken the lead.
Nibiru sort of comes through like that, and there's a time now where Nibiru and our Earth are travelling at the same rate. So we're not seeing any major changes because it's still around about 1.5 AU away. AU is a measure of the distance between the Earth and the Sun. It's like the radius measurement. When the Japan earthquake happened, it was 2 AU away, and we had a magnitude 9 earthquake. The next alignment happens on September 26th this year, and it is between us and the Sun. And at that point, it is 0.38 away from us. Now, gravitational fields, it's 0.38, which is around about 40 million miles. It's 4/10 of the distance to the sun. Gravitational fields and infrared work on what's called an inverse square relationship. So every unit of distance, the force magnifies by the square of it. When it was 2 away, we had a magnitude 9 earthquake. On September 26, the forces are 25 times greater. The gravitational forces, the infrared forces, they're all 25 times greater on that date. You see that list there of all the earthquakes? Every single one of those places, there will be earthquakes. And the magnitude of those earthquakes, does everybody know how the Richter scale works? Richter scale, for those of you who don't know, is that an 8.8 magnitude earthquake and an 8.9, the 8.9 is 10 times greater than the 8.8. Okay? And a 9 earthquake is 10 times greater than the 8.9, which means that to go from 8.8 to 9 is 100 times bigger. Okay? It's a logarithmic function. What I'm being told is on September 26th, the whole Pacific Rim will go with magnitude 12 to 15 earthquakes. Magnitude 12 to 15 earthquakes. Okay? That is totally consistent with the mathematics. I said there was going to be stuff that, you know, you might go, what? The whole Pacific Rim. New Zealand will disappear. Japan will disappear. Indonesia will disappear. China will disappear. Korea will disappear. Russia will disappear. The west coast of America will disappear. The whole lot. Whole lot. East coast of Australia will not be affected by the earthquakes per se, but they will be affected by the tidal waves that come from it. Okay, I want to talk a little bit before that. Okay? Before that happens, as you get into August and this gets closer, the gravitational effects of this brown dwarf star are going to start to pull not only on the crust of the planet greater, but they're going to pull on our little old moon. Now, at the moment, the moon's got a fairly spherical orbit around the Earth, okay? But as this brown dwarf gets closer, it's going to pull the moon closer to it, and the moon is going to have a more elliptical orbit. So what's going to happen is the moon is going to be pulled into more elliptical orbit. What effect will that have on the planet? The effect it will have is that whenever the moon is here, its gravitational pull on the water will be greater, so you are going to have massive king tides. So expect through August and the beginning of September that the major coastal cities of the world will all be flooded at some point. Not tidal waves, but massive tides. London, Amsterdam, Melbourne, Sydney, Venice. If there's a coastal city it's whole Netherlands.
What about places like Hawaii, Thailand, in terms of tide resurgence?
Everyone's going to be affected by it. Everyone's going to be affected by this. If you're living on the coast, and we've said to people, you're going to get a warning, sell your property and get out of there.
Can I ask you something?
Yep. Shh, folks, please, I can't hear.
A few months back on TV, remember how we had that minor eclipse? I think it was last year.
That was a lunar eclipse. Yeah.
Now they're saying that we're going to have a major eclipse in November, but I don't know if it's this year or next year. I think they said next year.
Okay. Before we even
Battle
get to
starts.
that, September 26th, okay, for about a week before that, this object is going to be very, very obvious in our skies. One of the link, oh, no, I don't think I put it on that sheet. There is a link of somebody who went into Soho, which is the, looks at the sun, and it's beautiful. It's March 15th or something like that. And there's an image of the sun, and there's an image of Venus, and there's this big black object there. Black, not throwing any light off, it's black. He went back a day later to confirm it all, and NASA had airbrushed it out. Airbrushed it out, because it was inside the orbit of Venus, which is where it is at the moment. So this object is going to cover 1/5 of the sky. Okay, 1/5 of the sky, and it's going to be moving along. By then, anarchy will be ruling because they'll have collapsed the financial markets and they'll have put most people into concentration camps. Does everyone know about the FEMA camps? Okay, the FEMA camps, there's about 800 of them around the US, and they house 50,000 people upwards. And they are detention centres with barbed wire and the whole thing around them. 800 of them that can house 50,000 people each adds up to 40 million people. They're all fully manned, and yet the American prison system is overcrowded. Why can't they put some of their lower people into these detention centres? And the interesting thing about these FEMA camps is they have stockpiled coffins that can hold 3 bodies at a time. Why does the American government know that they're going to have to put 40 million people into detention centres for?
Fire on the enemy warship.
Okay. And they're going to dispose of the bodies? Does this sound like something that happened? And who are the same people that are running all of this? It was a trial. They trialled everything out in the 40s.
So is that where religion is to come in? Or is this like...
Religion's going to come in?
Is that where religion is going to come into all of this as well?
No.
No. So what's the purpose? Or what reason?
Good, we'll get to all of that. Why are they doing that? Okay, why are the Illuminati doing it is a good question. Because they want to control everything, because they only need a certain number of people alive to be able to serve them. They have an agenda, which we'll get to in the second half. Okay, I want to get through this first half stuff so you know what's going on. When this object goes across the sky, it's going to cause an eclipse that will last at least 3 days. At least 3 days. But here's the big thing. When it lines up with the sun and our planet, there is going to be a cosmic sonic shockwave that will totally blow out our Van Allen belts and our magnetic fields, and will leave the planet totally open to gamma radiation. It's what they call in the Bible Gabriel's trumpet. When Gabriel's horn shall blow, the world shall da-da-da. It's a sonic blast to do with the lining up.
Good luck, everyone.
The magnetic fields will be... They're already being weakened. It's like watching Star Trek. When the shields go down, bang. If you are out in the open at that point, you will literally be fried alive. It's like the vampire jumping out into the light. So you need to be able to get out of the direct line for the whole duration that our magnetic field will be up to 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, so that's the first big thing. So you've got massive earthquakes. Basically every volcano on the planet will go off at that time. Are you all aware of the super volcano in Yosemite National Park? No, those of you who aren't. There is a volcano in the northern part of America under Yosemite National Park. The caldera is 200 miles long, 80 miles wide. Last year I got an email that said in 3 days there had been 1,100 earthquakes in that spot. But it was nothing to worry about. The lake bed has risen. The lake is so hot now that no fish can survive. And there was 1,100 earthquakes just in 1 3-day period, but it's nothing to worry about. I can believe when you go to the site that shows all the earthquakes around the world, and they are airbrushing off and taking off earthquakes that are happening in certain locations because they don't want you to know that they're going on. Because the US government has written off 60 million of its people top Northwest. Because if it told them the truth, it would have to relocate them. And they're all expended. So it's prepared. So you're going to have all these volcanoes going off. So you're going to have pyroclastic blasts going everywhere. So you've got level 12, 13 magnitude earthquakes, volcanoes at the same point. You know, it's not going to shift a little bit like this. We're talking about the distance here and there dropping like 400 meters. Not little bucklings. Okay? Have you ever seen like images of the French Alps that show the rock strata like that? That happens in the space of a couple of minutes because the power of the earthquake causes the rock to liquefy and form waves. And then they break, and then when it stops, they recover. They tell you that all of these mountain ranges have all been formed over thousands and hundreds of thousands of years. Why? They happen in the space of minutes. Machu Picchu was a seaside village because Lake Titicaca is a salt lake and it's 1,500 metres in the air. It happened overnight when the pole shift happens. These are the extremes that these things happen at. So we've got the cosmic waves that are going to hit. You're going to have wind speeds over 1,000 miles an hour. You're going to have surface temperatures of 60 degrees plus. There will be wildfires all over the planet. Airspeed, cosmic radiation, all the water surfaces are going to dry up. The volcanic ash is going to cause huge amounts of acid rain. So you're not the electromagnetic pulses are going to fry all electrics. Have you noticed how the satellites and TVs are starting to play up? Yeah? They're all going to go down. And they're trying to patch it and cover it up so you don't notice it. But as this thing gets closer, more and more of the satellites are going to go down. Okay? So that's September 26. Moving on from September 26, the next date you have to be concerned about is October the 17th. October the 17th, Nibiru is now 0.23. It's the closest point that it comes to us. That's 21 million miles away from the Earth. So at 21 mils, if there are any volcanoes that have not gone off by then, if there's any part of the planet that is not separated by then, it will do it then. Because the forces involved are now over 80 times what they were when the Japan earthquake happened. Next date on from that is November the 2nd, 3rd through to the 7th. And what happened then was, when this thing's coming through and it passed through the asteroid belt, it picked up a few travellers with it, like the tin cans behind a wedding car. So here you've got this massive gravitational object goes through the asteroid belt and it drags a whole lot of stuff with it. Some of them are this big, some of them are 100 miles large. Now the scientists will tell you that we've had all these extinction level events that stopped the Cambrian and the Mesozoic, 65 million years ago, that wiped out the dinosaurs, and they say there is something that causes an extinction level event every 26 million years. Got, chaps. Well, sometimes when Nibiru comes through, we're not here at this close point, we're on the other side of the sun, so we're safe. But sometimes, maybe every 26 million years, we pass through the tail of this. And on November the 3rd to the 7th, we pass through the tail of this brown dwarf. So we are running a whole asteroid field. We're going to get huge numbers of showers. I've had this vision since I was a child, and now I know what it's about. It's a recurring thing. It's going to year after year after year after year. Now I know what it's about. We have one saving grace at that time. Our moon is on the lee side. It can potentially shield us from some of the impacts. But I'm being told there will be major cities who will be obliterated by being hit by asteroids. And it's not one or two, there's going to be showers, massive showers of them, for about 3 days. And if you look at the other side of the moon, it is totally pockmarked with impact craters, different to the side that we see. So clearly it's done some sort of protection in the past. I'm feeling that the most likely time when the crust will totally separate and turn upside down will be October 17. Because that's when the gravitational forces, it could go before then. Then November 23rd, there's another alignment which could cause more earthquakes, etc. But from then on, it starts to move further and further out. That's what's going to happen. That's when it's going to happen. And the wheres are pretty much everywhere will be affected. There are safe places to be, and we'll get into that in the second half, not just physically, but also spiritually. Okay, we're just giving you the physical stuff now, and then in the second half, Crystal will take you through a lot of the spiritual understandings, which will get you to understand why you've chosen to be here at this time.
Smoke generator activated.
And we'll cover a little bit of that. The last thing I want to leave you with before we have a break is this 2012. So what does 2012 mean? Okay. Where does the date December 21st, 2012 come from? December 21st, 2012. Mayan calendar? No. No. That date comes from the Illuminati. The date does not exist in the Mayan calendar. The Mayans do not talk about, they don't have our calendar date. So what people have supposedly done is they've tried to match the Mayan calendar to ours. But the Mayans don't talk about their calendar ending on a particular date as being significant. Like we don't go, oh, December 31st is the end of some massive thing. They talk about a change. They talk about a shift from the fifth sun, from the end of the fourth sun into the fifth sun. They don't mention anything about a brown dwarf. The Mayans talk about a shift of the sun. That's really important, the fourth sun, and we'll get into that. The date has been given by the Illuminati to trap the New Age people. To trap them into believing they have to prepare for this date, so they're caught totally unawares by what's going to happen in the next 2 months. And most New Age people have bought it hook, line and sinker, because it's all tied into the Mayan calendar, and therefore it's about the ascension. And there's going to be no big earth changes because we can pray them away and we can do all of that, which we'll get into the second half. The Mayans talk about earth changes that precede it, but not at the same time. So what's happened is everybody has dumped everything onto this Illuminati constructed date. Everything to do with the birth of Jesus and all these things, they're all things that are tied into Illuminati ritual. That just happens to be the winter solstice. What a coincidence, because the Illuminati are all into that sort of stuff. Dates and all sorts of things. That comes from them. It's not a real date. But coincidentally, around that time is the beginning of a transition period. Okay? So let's go say that. So yeah, so Nostradamus, Edgar Casey, all of those prophecies that relate to what's going to happen in the next 2 months have all been dumped onto this date because people are stupid and they'll buy it. And if you tell them enough times, it comes from Mayan calendar, they'll believe it. Not in Mayan calendar at all. Nowhere. And here's another interesting thing. The Mayans were smart. They had the number 0. If I go from 3 BC to 2 BC,
Our team has
1
taken
BC,
the lead.
what is next? Next year is 1 AD. There is no year 0. lost a year there. And at the time, there were 3 different calendars running at the turn of the century, turn of the millennium. 3 different calendars. And it's got pulled here, there, and everywhere. Okay, it wasn't until Pope Gregory in 540 AD or something like that that we got the calendar that we have now, which interestingly enough was based on an old Mayan calendar, an old Egyptian calendar, and all those things. So they've borrowed. Every religion has been created by the Illuminati and megalomaniacs, borrowing stuff from here, there, and everywhere. There's not an ounce of truth in any of it. If you're interested, I could tell you who Moses really was and who Jesus really was, and how they've been corrupted and how they've been twisted to enslave the masses.
What about Orthodox
All of them are derivatives of the original lies that you've been told. And all of those lies have been there to enslave you and trap you, to stop you from free thinking that you have a total connection to Source every single microsecond. And there are no rules. Source does not have rules. There is no good and evil. There is no right or wrong. It's just an experience. And if Source doesn't have those rules and says to you, whatever you do enriches my being, then why do we suddenly feel that we have to listen to someone who tells us that we can only access that spiritual knowledge through them? And we have to do what they tell us to do, or we're heretics and be burned at the stake, or excommunicated, or something like that.
So is karma part of the lie?
Karma is non-existent unless you choose to believe it. There is only cause and effect. I let go of the pen, it falls down. There is no good or bad. But if you believe in karma, that's what you will manifest, because you have total free will to create whatever you want.
So what about like past life? People saying, oh, well, I did this in my past life, so now I've got this in this life.
Okay. Past lives implies that time is linear, and it's not. Time is simultaneous. You can have alternate lives, and you can experience things. Let's say that you're an actor, and you've chosen to play a role in a particular play. And having done that season, you then sit back afterwards and go, oh, I could have done that bit better. Yeah, oh yeah, I should have done that. Yeah, that would have been better. That's what you do. You find better ways to play the roles. And things that are more connected with him in love. And we can talk more about that later. So 2012, what's 2012 about? I'll give you what that's about, and then we'll have a break. Okay. Our solar system is part of the Milky Way galaxy. And you've probably all seen pictures of the Milky Way galaxy. It's like a spiral galaxy that's looking at it from the top. And looking at it from side on sort of looks a little bit like a UFO sort of thing. At the middle of our galaxy, as with all galaxies, is a black hole, massive black hole. And black holes give out energy in 2 directions. They give it out in pulses that radiate outwards, like when you drop a pebble in a pond and they radiate out. So that's like on a plane, and they send it out in a spike from the center. Okay, so here's our plane going through here, which is a big disc, and the pulses radiate out from there. Now our solar system's out here somewhere on one of these arms. We're not even a major player in the galaxy. Seriously, the human form is not. But everything revolves around something. So not only do we revolve around the galaxy, but we revolve around another solar system, i.e. Sirius. Ever wondered why we're so connected to Sirius? It's because we're in a paired orbit around a black hole in Alcyon. So we're going up and down as we go around, like that, like a carousel horse going up and down. Is anyone familiar with the Vedic yugas, where they divide civilization up to periods of ascent and descent? It covers like 520,000 years or something like that. As we go up here, we're getting further away from the galactic plane, which is a gravity, and we slow down. And then we get pulled back and we accelerate. We are in a position of acceleration at the moment, and we're just about to go into this galactic plane, which is also known as the photon band. Okay? So what happens when we hit the photon band? Because people talk about spiritual ascension. Okay. It is impossible for you to spiritually ascend. Do you know why? Because you're already there. Remember how I said everything comes from source downwards? Your higher self has chosen to manifest into this dimension to experience. You've chosen to manifest. You may have forgotten it because you're caught up in the third dimensional stuff, but you cannot ascend to something that you already are. You just become aware of where you're receiving it from. Are you so caught up in the play that you believe you're the character, or are you sitting in the audience admiring your work? You can't ascend because you already are every single one. So what is this so-called ascension about? I'm going to go back to nuclear physics. I'm going to go to the atom, and the simplest atom of hydrogen, because we have a lot of hydrogen in us. We're basically hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon.
Anti-aircraft gun
That's what
crews
most
are
of
on
us
full
are.
alert.
So we have a proton here, and we have an electron in what they call a shell. Does everyone sort of remember that from basic science or something like that? And then you get to helium, has 2 and 2, and then you get the next one up and you get another shell and another shell. Even hydrogen, even though it's only got one proton here, this other energy shell still exists. Remember how we went back to the sun has these vibrational things that cause the planets to form in certain areas?
Anti-aircraft gun crews are on normal alert.
Ship is on fire! Exactly the same. When we go through the photon band, it's a huge pulse of energy. Ever put your foot down on the pedal of a piano and hit one note, and all the others vibrate? It goes, when we go through the photon band, every single atom in your body gets hit by this energy, and the electrons jump to the next level, or maybe even. So every single atom in your body becomes energized. And as you do that, you become less dense, higher vibration, which people go, it's fifth dimensional existence. That's the physics of it.
Taking the lead.
It's not some spiritual thing that you have to work to get. Shift in perception. But what's happening here on this very, very important. This is going to happen, but it's the agenda behind it. And the second half, we're going to get into the who and the why.
Comments are fucking insane.
Apart from seeing this thing in the sky, there's also going to be 4 Jupiter-sized planets floating around at the same time. So the skies are going to look amazing. There's also going to be communication between the brown dwarf and our sun. By communication, I mean exchange of plasma. So they're going to be these massive coronal injections that are going to be happening. So the sky is going to look incredible. It's going to be pretty dangerous. There is a possibility that one of the other planets around Nibiru could collide with one of the other planets in our solar system, or with the sun. I'm being told those things won't happen this time, but the sky is going to look amazing. Really, this is such an exciting time to be here. And I know it seems bizarre, but you'll work through, and Crystal will take you through this process of working through the initial shock to get you into your higher self, to understand why you're here and to see the exciting aspects to all of this. So in the second half, I'm going to talk a little bit about the who and the why stuff, and then Crystal will also do some why stuff as well. The key to the who stuff goes back 4 billion years, because there's a race of reptilians called the Dracos.
Those reptilians.
And they feel that they own this universe because they've been around here for so long.
It's a fucking
And
lizard
they in
people.
fact owned this solar system for a long period of time. Hence why we had a period where the dinosaurs were the major. Now the thing about the Dracos is they operate from the lower realms of the fourth dimension. Okay? The lower realms of the fourth dimension down into the third dimension. And they've been travelling around conquering everybody because they believe they have a right to. They don't have emotions. Some of you might have heard that there is a good reptilian race, and that there's the bad reptilians and there's the good reptilians. It's not true. The reptilians have an agenda, no emotions, and they will do whatever they need to do to achieve that result. So if they're being nice to you, which is what some people believe the reptilians are, they're not. They're just doing what they need to do. Now the reason why the reptilians are the key in all this is because they want to conquer the whole universe. Not just the third dimensional realm, which is ruled by fear, which is the mirror. So they use fear to control everything from the fourth dimensional realm. Now what you can do at the fourth dimension is you have the ability to shapeshift. So you can project onto third dimensional forms. So you can control, because their agenda is to get up into the higher realms. They want to get up into the fifth dimension and the sixth dimension and seventh dimension to conquer it. But they can't, because they're rooted in fear. So what they decided to do was to get hold of some humanoid mammalian DNA and create hybrids, and to use like a Trojan horse to get into the fifth dimension. So through hybrid forms, they could get up into the fifth dimension to conquer it. So what they did on this planet, they started creating a whole lot of experiments 100 million years ago with their own DNA, trying to find a form that could get up in here, but they couldn't. There was also a big galactic war going on at the time, and 65 million years ago, the planet got hit by an asteroid, bang. And a truce was called between a galactic federation, and probably some of you have heard of it in some other form, of fifth dimensional up beings.
Space Force. Who
live in a state of love. And they take various forms of that. So they declared that this planet Earth would be a hospital where beings from all over the galaxy could come here to work through their shit, where they could incarnate into forms to work out their karma, because they believe in it. And the Dracos said, we don't have a problem with that at all, so long as we can help. So we just need some access to some DNA to create some vehicles that these beings can incarnate into. So 20 million years ago, they got to a point, and I'm jumping a little bit because they created all the shrews and all the things first, but 20 million years ago, they created the old world monkeys. And the old world monkeys had between 20 and 80 chromosomes. Now the Dracos, they live in excess of 100 million of our years. And that may seem extraordinary, but imagine I'm a butterfly and I live for a day. And I look at you and I go, are you telling me you live 365,000 of my lifetime? No, that's not possible. So to a butterfly, the concept of us living for 80, 90 years is ridiculous. Well, imagine we're the butterfly to the Dracos. They live over 500 million years. So a couple of million years for them to do an experiment is nothing. Okay. So having created the old world monkeys, they went, okay, let's work out which one's best out of that. And 12 million years ago, they created gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, and the gibbons. Now, the gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans had 48 chromosome pairs, I think, and the gibbons had 44. The gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans were a bit too strong, and the gibbons were a little bit, although they had the bipedal motion, they didn't have the strength needed. So what they did was they eventually settled on 46 chromosomes as the best vehicle to do that. Australopithecus, Peking man, Neanderthal man, Cro-Magnon man. Now the interesting thing about Neanderthal man is Neanderthals had a brain capacity twice as big as ours. And the anthropologists will tell you that they were so stupid they died out. Doesn't quite resonate with me. But what does resonate with me is if a Neanderthal is twice as smart as we are, then they would have been a threat to the Dracos. So they went, oh, we won't have that experiment. That went the wrong way. Don't want them too smart. Got to be able to control them. So they created, eventually, Homo sapiens. Not just one, but they created 9 prototypes, and they were all females. Activated. So, why would you create all females? Because if you're going to breed, you need females, not males. And in actual fact, you can breed parthenogenically. Now, parthenogenesis is where a female can impregnate herself. And there are numerous species on the planet that practice parthenogenesis, including mammals. And there was a Korean scientist who actually achieved this with human embryos back in 2004. Okay, so you can have parthenogenic stuff going on, and in fact, the female chromosome, just to put us men in our place, and this is very relevant to what I talked about before about the women knowing the toning, knowing the codes in DNA. A Y chromosome is actually a piece removed. Males are incomplete, deliberately incomplete. Okay, that's a little bit of a side there. So they created 9 prototypes. One with black skin, one with white skin, one with yellow skin, one with red skin, one with blue skin, one with green skin, one with brown skin, and I can't remember the others. And they put them in various places to see which one would develop and be the best vehicle. Then around about 450,000 years ago, there was a race on one of the planets around the brown dwarf. Now, the term Nibiru is often used for that. Now, Nibiru can refer to the planet from which these beings come from, or it can refer to the actual brown dwarf itself, or it can refer to that whole little mini system. They're all sort of interchangeable. The race that was on this planet came to the Earth 450 million years ago, and the Dracos said to them, we're quite happy for you to come onto this planet to mine your gold and do whatever you want, but we want some of your DNA. Not a problem. So they then genetically engineered the man as we know it now, and they used them to mine gold. And the Dracos were quite happy for this to go along. Because what happens is, within your DNA, you have segments that are reptilian. In fact, your brain, at the top of your stem, the first part of it is reptilian. And then the other bits are tacked on. There's a midbrain, and then it divides into 2 separate brains. Left hemisphere and right hemisphere are separate brains. They work totally independently, and then they work through the dorsal callosum, which is the part that joins it together. So we are a genetic experiment. And the reason we're a genetic experiment is so that the Dracos can get into the fifth dimension. So they control everything. So let's have a look at, and they're still on the planet. They control many of the lower levels of the underground dumps. They control absolutely everything. They control the Illuminati. They do everything through ritual.
Problem solved, sir.
Everything through ritual. So anything you do which is ritualistic is tapping into your reptilian DNA. It's controlling you. How many people are aware of Kundalini Yoga or practice Kundalini Yoga? It's reptilian. The symbology is all reptilian. Because you are continually trying to raise your energy up through your spine. If Kundalini Yoga worked, you would do it once and you would attain that level and stay there. You have no need to do it again. But what happens? You get pulled back down again. It's like you've got a piece of elastic here, you stretch it up and it gets pulled back down again. Stretch it up. It's reptilian. The whole energy is based in fear. And if you practice Kundalini Yoga, try this the next time. Project yourself to your highest state to begin with and reach down and pull up. Suddenly you will have no need to do Kundalini Yoga again because you will already be in that heightened state of awareness. We have a tendency to overcomplicate absolutely everything. The Source says there's nothing complicated in the universe. Everything is absolutely simple. There are levels. But everything is simple. We are the only creature in the universe that complicates everything. The only creature that does it. So the Dracos have this agenda where they want to get into the fifth dimension and they're using us as a vehicle to do it. So whenever your energy is locked into any sort of fear, you're operating at third dimensional level and they can manipulate you and control you. They'll control you through money because you'll have a fear of not having any, or not having as much as the person next door, or not having a house. And so the minute you're tapped into any sort of material possession, you are addicted to money, which is what they created. And their prime vehicle through which they create and control everything is the Illuminati. I can't even spell it. They control everything through the Illuminati because the people who the Illuminati fall into one of two categories. They are either full-blood reptilians shape-shifted into human form, or they are hybrid reptilians with their agendas. Their agenda is quite simple. They want to conquer the fifth dimension.
So why does it matter whether they're hybrid?
No, this is how they control. This is how they control the sheeple through the Illuminati, and they will either be fully reptilian appearing as human because they can shapeshift, or they will be in a hybridized human form. Total reptilian. Queen's a total reptilian. Hillary Clinton's a total reptilian. Yep. They are in every major government position in the world. Every president of the United States going back to Washington has been Illuminati. They are also controlling all of the major religions of the world.
Aren't they the Masons as well?
It's a subgroup. Yep. You've got the Rosicrucians, you've got the Masons, any sort of formal organisation that has rules of control is Illuminati control.
Yeah, had any personal experience which confirmed all this experience?
Have you walked around the world? Everything's controlled with rules and regulations. Have I met reptilians in this life? No. That doesn't mean that I'm not meant to. But I've spoken to many people who have. Many people who have. But Crystal, we'll get Crystal to tell you about her experiences when we were in a past life in Egypt, about what was happening to the priestesses in the temples. Kennedy's father was Illuminati, total Illuminati, and because of the bloodline, they come through. So he wanted his son to be the president, but it wasn't Jack who was supposed to be the president, it was the older brother who died in the war. So he pushed Jack through, and Robert. But see, both of those saw through the illusion, because there are other aspects, and we'll get into that now. The human form, the human body. Okay, we've got the reptilians in human forms over here. Then we've got what I call Gaia homegrowns. And then over here you've got your star-seeded. And many of you will fall into this category here. The Gaia homegrown consciousness in human bodies is consciousness that has come through Gaia. It's gone through being mineral, it's gone then up through being plant consciousness, it's then gone up through animals and insects, it's gone through the whole hierarchy, which the Buddhists talk about, to get into human body consciousness. And they are homegrown, and most of these people are pretty simple, basic sort of people. We probably all know people who would go, yeah, they don't have a lot of spirituality about them. Okay? That's a really important thing to say, because the star-seeded people are the ones who are invited to this planet to come to heal us. So they put their hand up and they said, yes, I'm going to come and I'm going to heal. They came from the Pleiades and Sirius, whatever they bring with them. Now, when you come here, you will partner up with someone from here, because there's no point with you partnering up another Pleiadian. Waste of time. So you will connect with people to try to... Because of what's going to happen. Yes, they're regrouping because they know it's time to leave. They've done their work. You will find someone who needs to learn about unconditional love and do everything to try to get it to them, and they just don't get it. So then you move on, you find another one. So, well, I'll try and find another one. And that's exactly what the healers do, whatever it is you do. And that's why you've chosen to come here. Look, no. From the people I've spoken to, they have a knee-jerk reaction to them straight away and they don't have anything to do with them. Because you can't heal these people. They have...
Cold-blooded.
They're cold-blooded. Yeah, you're not going to be able to heal them, so therefore you suddenly go, no, I'm not going to go there. So you just stay away from them. So, no, I don't know of any star-seeded people who've tried to heal reptilians.
Enemy battleship foundered. Off to a great start.
Oh, look, you get them referred to left, right and centre in all of the ancient religions.
Now I've got a placement for them.
Yeah. But they're not necessarily the Anunnaki. Okay? There are people in this room that come from different star seeds who have come here to help. And here's the interesting thing. There are a lot of light workers who are praying, doing a lot of spiritual work to prevent these earth changes from happening. Okay? You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to. You are not allowed to interfere with the free will of Gaia. The light workers who are doing that are caught up in their own ego. I'm the brilliant doctor who can heal all. Okay? Let's say all the life forms consciousnesses on Gaia. Amoebas, ants, fish, birds, animals, you name it. Add them all up. Now put the human consciousness in. Where do we fall? Nowhere. We're less than 0.00001% of the consciousness on this planet. And in terms of Gaia, an ant has as much of a vote as a human, as a life force. So Gaia and all of the life forces on this planet saw a half a dozen cells deciding they were going to do their own thing. What do we call that? We call that cancer. And we get rid of it because it's detrimental. Gaia has an agreement with the sun and this solar system to have a cycle of cleansing that comes through every period and a culling of this 100% of human consciousness. And I'm not talking about the starseed, because a lot of these people say it's going to be a smooth transition and you're just going to be able to ascend. Of course it is for them. If they can just shift back into their star consciousness whenever they want. Not a problem. So they'll do it. But they're trying to tell these people that they can do it too. And that the events are. So they're all praying against the free will of God. Not allowed to happen. But here's the interesting thing. A small percentage of the human consciousness have been able to deactivate
The entire
reptilian
crews are on
DNA,
normal alert.
which keeps them locked in fear, and step up. Create something. And the Galactic Federation, fifth dimensional beings, etc., think that's extreme. And so they are coming to conference to support and witness it, the transition. But for this transition to happen, there has to be a majority rule. Well, if this is 100,000 people, and that's me being generous, against 6 million, you need 51% of the vote. How are you going to get that? Sorry? Speed it up. By wiping out this and just helping these people. Those who are ready, those who are open, and that's the role of the light. Help these people become aware. Is to help these people become aware so that they can make it. There's going to be a roundtable discussion with the Federation as to whether human consciousness is allowed to be told about it. They're not all convinced. So the key here is this Dracos stuff, because within your DNA there are segments that are reptilian, and while they are activated, the reptilians can control you. Have any of you heard of the Montauk experiments that were going on in the US? They were manipulating people using frequencies, mind games. You know, the guy that just blew all these people away in harps a different thing. The guy who blew all the people away he was a Freemason, and he'd been in the States. And so he was one of these people that's been subjected to this. And they use these people to propagate fear. Martin Bryant was another one. If you look into his history, he actually wasn't the one who did that, by the way. There was someone else who did that. He was a scapegoat. Julius Assange, look, he's a whistleblower. He's a whistleblower. He's not a person who wants that. So the key here is, where do we fit in? And we know who's behind this one. Dracos through the Illuminati, building up underground bunkers, manipulating everything. They're the ones who are trying to control us all like puppets. But there are aspects of us that come from the higher fifth dimensional realm. And the higher fifth dimensional realm are quite happy for this to happen. Because they understand it's just a play. It's just, you need to have at the third dimension. They totally understand it. So they're not stopping it from happening because they understand it. Where do we fit in? And that's where I'm going to bring Crystal in. Because we need to be able to deactivate all of our reptilian stuff and make sure that so that's who behind it, the why we've given to you. So I'm now going to and she's going to take you through the spiritual aspects of it so that you get a full thing, not just the physical stuff. The stuff that everyone's going to want the proof for. Now we're going into the stuff that you can't prove because it's in you.
As you know, my name is Converse. my journey began as well as a child wide open. I had a very strong connection to the Diva Kingdom. The gnomes that are called cuckoos, they were looking after me, and my parents could go anywhere. I said, oh, the cuckoos will look after me, I'm fine. So a strong connection to the elves as well, and just that whole nature kingdom. And then I shut it down. For whatever reason, conditioning, even though my parents were quite open, I shut it down. And went into full-on masculine ways of needing to achieve things. So because I'd been taught or conditioned that if I'm a good girl, if I'm achieving things, I'm going to be rewarded and I'm going to get love. So my way of thinking that I'm going to get love was to get approval in the world, was to become a high achiever. So I did a lot of things, and you name it, I've been always incredibly busy, completely buying into the masculine world, which I call it, because these are masculine principles, competition, the need to prove ourselves, because what's behind it is fear. And if you remember what Alex was talking about in the very beginning, he drew this circle. This being source, this being all love. And then he drew this circle here. In order to experience himself, source needed to create the absence of himself, which is fear.
This lady is full
Did you
of
talk about
shit.
the three? No? Okay. So if we're just love, if we're just in a state of love, which is our natural state, how do we know what it is? How do we experience it as anything but? Because if we're like ill, now if we're always healthy, we don't know what it means to be ill. We don't appreciate what we have in our health. So it's the same with this, it's the same with love. If we don't know anything else, how can we appreciate ourselves as being love? So we choose to go into this third dimensional illusion of duality to experience all the emotions that we have, and all the facets of fear and all the facets of love. And that's what I bought into, completely and utterly, until I realized that wasn't getting me anywhere. I was being all things to all people, trying very hard, but really wasn't happy inside of here. So then I realized this is where I needed to get back to. I needed to simplify my life. I needed to stop needing to be liked. And I just needed to just speak my truth and be who I am. So I experienced the fear, and now it was about me getting back into the love state. And this is the journey. Some people may know that there's 7 chakras, and others may know that there's 13. And the 13 are just aspects. There's 1 at the base, 2 at sacrum, 3 in the solar plexus, 1 in heart, 2 here, 3 here, and again 1. And the 3 here is what I'm going to talk about, because we can all know, first we know things, then we experience things in order to have an awareness of things. So here we're just all knowing. So it's the intellectual understanding, the intellectual knowing, and a lot of people I know are doing what's called spiritual intellect, have their spirituality in their head. And I was one of them. I knew everything, I understood everything, but I hadn't experienced it. So this is where I'm now going back into, and helping other women also to, or generally everybody, to get back into that feminine, which is what we need at this point. It's the women who need to now step forward to embracing their feminine essence, their being in heart, and creating communities where we can work together as a collective, so that we can prepare for those changes. Because look where patriarchal society has gotten us. And this is nothing against men or advocating females or not putting men down. It's simply a fact. The masculine aspect within all of us is fear-based. So we need to prove things. We need to be out there for ourselves. The feminine knows that is inclusion, and every perspective is valid. And so the 3 aspects is the seeing something, then it's an experience of it, and in order for us then to know it, to fully have an awareness of it. So I use my crystal to demonstrate that. Each one, our human perspective is one side of the crystal. This is You know, I can't see what you can see there. So I might say, well, mine is really smooth. And you say, no, 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 it's ruffled. And so we each see something different. And but it's all part of the same truth. Because if we shift our perspective to that highest point here, all is true. And this goes very much about, you know, the reaction to the events that Alex was talking about that are to come. You know, we all have filters through which we hear what is being presented to us.
Good luck, everyone.
Some will say, and the majority of the population is in denial about it, and saying, oh, I don't have time for this crap, you know, my life is going well, thank you very much, I'm too busy, I don't want to talk about it. Others say, well, at least I have an awareness of it. If I have an awareness of it, you know, what can we do about it? I might as well die, but at least I have an awareness. That's another filter. And then there's the people who prepare. Then there's the people, like the light workers, who say, well, no, you know, we're bringing out this fear. And in bringing out this fear in people, the core fear, we're actually affecting what's going to happen, because it's a cause and effect thing. So more people buy into the fear, the more people are going to be affected, and the more we're creating a bad event. That's one filter as well. Because from a different perspective, again, we could say, well, isn't it important that we understand where that we have this fear? Wouldn't we much rather know what's within us so that we can dissolve it and release it, rather than
massive storm moving in?
Because if we know it, we can move through it. And that's the key. So what I want to do is I want to firstly give you an understanding of why you are here personally. Why have you chosen to incarnate at this time where all these things are going to happen? You've chosen to incarnate to simply experience moving over into another dimension, experiencing a death that perhaps quite traumatic. Death, you know, because it is an illusion as well. Or have you chosen to be here that wants to help other people to get into their heart about this, you know, fully aware, saying, yes, this is what I choose to do. Are you somebody who's going to rebuild? What is your role? Are you somebody who's simply going to hold space? Simply holding love, being the eye.
Smoke generated.
Everything around is going haywire. Are you somebody who's going to look after the children? Because they need to stay. Are you somebody who's a very practical guy, you know, who's a masculine, who says, right, we're going to rebuild, this is what we've got to do, we've got to grab a bunker, we've got to have concrete above us, this is what we've got to do. What is your role? So I'm going to guide you through a meditation where you're going to get into
we destroyed an enemy cruiser. Off to a cracking start.
Throughout all of this is that we are going through the 5 stages of grieving in one way or another with this. And are you familiar with the 5 stages? No. I'll just briefly run you through them. So firstly, there's the denial. This can't happen. This is far too big, this is crazy, you know, what's he talking about? This can't happen, this is too big. Denial. Then comes the anger. And in one of our lectures, we had a lady who initially wrote on the website, actually I'll talk to you through them first. So there's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And in one of our lectures, somebody said, we've forgotten a stage. There are 6 stages. There's the excitement afterwards. Once we've accepted it, it's the excitement. Because if we have chosen to incarnate at this time, we must be pretty advanced scriptwriters, because we want to have drama in our lives. And I don't know if Alex spoke to you about the scriptwriter idea of that before we incarnate, we decide what we want to experience in our lives. So we write that script and we find the actors up here that can help us fulfill that script. And then we incarnate and we play it out. We become the actor. And most people forget that in becoming the actor, we forget that we were the scriptwriter as well, because we're getting too attached to just one side. We forget everything else. We forget that perspective. So it's about remembering at this time the perspective of the higher self. What is your purpose, and what have you chosen to create in this life? What have you chosen to experience? So For example, if you've chosen to experience love, you would create absence of love. So what you would incarnate in would be a family where there might be a lot of domestic violence, sexual abuse, just anything that is anything but love. Or joy, similar thing, or you want to experience hope. So you incarnate into a body that's very ill. And the problem is, the challenge is that we attach to those things. So once we've been sexually abused, once we felt rejected, we attach to those emotions and we project them forward into the future. And so we almost anticipate that that's going to happen again, right? Because that's what our past experience. So the key is to not attach, because only then, by knowing that, by going back to a higher perspective, can we then remember for what purpose we chose to experience those things. So the more ups and downs you have in your life, the more advanced soul you are, the more advanced the spiritual is. There was a lady she put on Alex's website an attack of, you know, I need some proof, what you're saying is outrageous, where's the evidence? First stage. After the lecture, she wrote another email. Thank you for ruining my life. Thanks very much for the awareness you've given me. This is all crap. I had a perfectly beautiful life and now I've got all this awareness going around in my head. Thanks very much. Anger. I don't know about her bargaining stage, but on the way home she also said that she cried. On the way home from the lecture, she was in her car going to a birthday party of her grandson. I've got all this awareness now. What am I going to do with it? How can I be happy for it?
We destroyed an enemy battleship in sight.
You know, these emotions, because we've come here to have these emotions, to experience what it feels like, to have this variety. And other beings from other dimensions, they look at us and thinking, wow, there's such richness. And look what we've created with it. Music, dramas, films, incredibly beautiful things, all because of these ups and downs of emotions. So they're not to be ignored. And all of you are going to be at one stage or another with these emotions in those 5 stages. And my aim is to give you an understanding of an experience of going to that 5th stage, give you an experience right now, so that in a couple of days to come, you will be able to and still accept those feelings. Because I liken it to a water balloon. You know, if you have a water balloon, you're in a pool, and you don't want anybody to see that you've got this balloon, you try and push it down on yourself. It comes up somewhere else again, doesn't it? And you try and push it down again, it comes up somewhere else. Enemy battleship detected. That you don't have any time. So you set these emotions, celebrate them, live them, honor them, and you don't detach to them. Does that make sense? And it's real. And I know it's easier said than done, but if you can remember that. My dad passed away two years ago, and that was in Germany, so I didn't fly to the funeral. A couple of weeks later, I went to into the cinema, and there was a film playing about
dead ahead. Torpedoes dead ahead. Critical engine damage. We're taking on water.
But I was on a date.
Problems.
You know, I was grieving from my father's passing over, and I noticed myself needing and wanting to have a shoulder to cry on. We were there to have fun. So realizing that my inner child needs a shoulder to love,
We sank an enemy destroyer.
and
Oh, fuck you, buddy.
And I told her that she was still loved. I told her everything that you were telling me, little child that was crying when she's upset about something. And I put my hands on my heart and I felt her and I kind of held her like this. And then I cleaned up my face and went out again and had a great night. So I honored my emotions. I expressed them, I let them go, and I carried on what I needed to do. So if you can remember that story when you're getting into one of those phases, maybe that might be able to help you to honor it and move through it very quickly. So let's go into why you are here. So what I'd like you to do is just put down all your pens and papers. So just put your hands not open like you would normally in a meditation, but downwards, because it's like you're giving yourself the energy. This is all about you. The receiving, just trust that the receiving will still come into you and through your hands into your body. So I'd just like you to close your eyes and focus on your breathing. Feeling your body on the chair, your feet on the floor. And just deepening and lengthening your breath. I just want you to imagine, open the soles of your feet and connecting your energy to the heart of the earth, to the heart of Mother Gaia. Whatever you visualize in the heart of the center of the earth to be. It could be a flower, it could be a crystal, it could be a heart, whatever it is for you. And there is no right or wrong. So whatever you get throughout this meditation, throughout this visualization, is perfectly right for you. And if you don't get anything, then just pretend, just make it up. So feeling the connection to the earth, feeling her energy merging with yours, bringing it into your body and through your body up, through the crown of your head, to the cosmic mother, to all that is, to source, your higher self, God consciousness. And just feeling that sense of oneness, connecting above and below, expanding, opening your heart, being fully present in the now. And I want you to visualize being in a beautiful, natural setting, your favorite place in nature. This could be at the beach, in a beautiful meadow, or in the forest. And just notice in the distance a figure appearing, a being. And this being has an incredibly powerful energy. Just notice her or his walk and the qualities that this being has. Incredible sense of love, personal power, wisdom, grace, whatever else there is for you. And just watch this being approaching you, coming closer and closer. And just see her or him with your heart, not just with your eyes. Feel this.
General quarters.
And now you're standing eye to eye, looking into his or her eyes, right into the soul. And this being has a message for you. And it's whispering in your ear why you are here right now, why you have chosen to incarnate at this point in time. What is your purpose? Are you here to prepare for the shift? Are you here to rebuild after? Or are you here to observe it from outer space? And what specifically is your role if you are here to rebuild or to prepare? What have you come here for? And now thank the being. Maybe he or she has given you words, maybe just a feeling, whatever it is perfectly perfect. And just give him or her a big embrace. Connecting your hearts. Merging. Becoming one. Feeling the feelings, feeling the beingness of this being, seeing the world through his or her eyes, experiencing that strength and power, that stillness, that courage, that love. Whatever else there is for you. Visualize there is a cockpit like of an airplane. You're going to walk in, it's your personal plane and you're the pilot. And there's lots of switches and flickers and lots of wires going off everywhere. Some are big, some are small, some are colorful, some are grey or brown or dark black. Just have a good look around there. This is your DNA. It's the control room of your DNA. And your DNA, of course, being the blueprint of who you are. It's got recorded in it all of your life experiences, all of your ancestors' life experiences, and all the experiences you've had in alternate or past lives. All right in front of you. So have a good look around. And I would like you to see all the switches that have reptilian DNA in it activated. Look at what they look like. What do they smell? Are they green? Are they really thick? How many are there? Are they really black? Good note of them, and if it feels right for you, and notice what's happening. Maybe they're shriveling, maybe they're shrinking, reducing in size or color. What's happening to them? If you like, just follow them all the way through your body. You might just rip the whole thing out, and you might also like to roll them up like a film roll and put them into your reference library. Or you might just let them go back to where they came from. Whatever feels right for you. When you've done that, just have another look. Hiding wires that maybe you haven't seen at first glance. Let's see if there are any of those or any other things. Need to control, need to be.
Enemy battleship foundered.
Anger, depression. Just go ahead and flick those switches off. And notice how it changes. Notice how suddenly there's more room because they're shrinking and shriveling, and you're taking them out, either storing them in the library or just letting them go into the ether away to where they came from. Because you have experienced what it feels like to live with that fear, and now is the time to let that go. Because you know it, you've experienced it. There are any switches that have attachments.
The ship is on fire!
Switches. Let's go ahead and flip them off as well. And now that we can come back there. Now for the exciting.
Problem solved,
What I'd
sir.
like you to do is look at all the switches and all those patterns and panels that have love, strength, courage, abundance, awareness written on them. What do they look like? Are they on full? Are they on half? Are they off? And just go ahead and just turn them on forward and see what happens. Notice new juice, new energy moving through them. Expand in your being, using the breath to do this, fully connecting with that. Come back to the natural setting that you're in, your beautiful space and nature. Feeling the shifts in your body. Noticing what's different, what's the same. Becoming staying connected to all of your
Anti-aircraft gun crews are on full alert.
And just trust that whatever you needed to get, you got, even if you couldn't follow the whole thing. And how are you feeling now? Did some of you feel a shift? A lot lighter? Yes. Because we have a choice.
Anti-aircraft gun crews are on normal.
We are that lightness. So whenever we get knocked down, we can. And you don't have to take half an hour to do it. You can sometimes just remember. So this is one of the preparations. It can be a roller coaster, so it's about acknowledging that and shifting back to the solution perspective that can help you to maintain calm and go about things the way you want to. And maybe even that childlike innocence, that childlike excitement. Because children are rolled off. So just tapping back into that as we're preparing for these changes would be a really, really helpful thing. So that's the spiritual and emotional preparation. Make sure that you visualize exactly how you choose to respond to those things. Imagine what you do when your arm is shaking. Imagine what you'll do and how you'll respond when people are suddenly coming to you because they heard you talk about it. Visualizing yourself being the eye of the storm that calms them. And running this through your mind over and over, because in doing so, what you're doing is creating new neural pathways. Scientifically, it's proven that we are in a alpha state and we visualize things. We can train and wouldn't that be a great thing if you react to it, to these events, as if you've done it? I should visualize exactly how I want it to feel. And when things got wrong, I'm still. So it really does work. As an experiment, they've divided the team. One half was going to play on the field, and the other half was playing in their mind, training the same amount of hours. And guess which team would win when they came back after a week? Yeah, the visualization ones. Do you know why? Yeah, exactly. They had no evidence of failure. They never got it wrong in their mind. They always got it right. So then your pathways were very strongly geared towards getting it right. So it's incredibly powerful. So if you choose to do that, I invite you to maybe 5 times a day, practicing, visualizing exactly how you choose to be. And there's another thing, and Source always says there's no good in meditating for an hour a day. It's the moment by moment that we really want to experience. So he says 5 times for 5 minutes. So if you can, go into your heart 5 times for 5 minutes a day. Simply connecting to all of who you are. Feeling that lightness, feeling that love in your heart. Remembering that this is who you are love. So experiencing that for 5 minutes, 5 times a day would be an incredibly powerful thing to do. Again, because there's very small, there's only a couple of hours between those 5 minutes, 5 times a day, in which you will remember and you will strengthen that way of being if you're not already doing that. And with that, I'd like to invite Alex back to talk a little bit about the physical preparations. And just be very consciously aware that as you're hearing how to prepare, that you stay in the space that you're in right now. It's a great exercise to keep that lightness up.
If any of you are like me, I tried meditation once. There was so much going on in my mind.
Anti-aircraft gun crews are on full alert.
And it just wouldn't work. And I had this voice saying to me, that's not right, it's not right, it's not right. And eventually when Source started to connect to me, he explained to me why. So people are meditating to try and clear their thoughts. He said, but every thought comes from Source. So when they're trying to clear their mind, they're then trying to fill it with thoughts from Source, from God. So they're sort of defeating the purpose. So the purpose is to be out in the middle of everything and be calm. Not to go off and be calm and be away from everything and come back.
Anti-aircraft gun crews are on normal alert.
I need to go and meditate. So the thing is, no, you need to be in that state and you need to be in the middle of the hurricane all the time. And I think Osho talks about it a lot. For those of you familiar with Osho, is that every moment is meditation. And that idea about, if you have trouble meditating or connecting, just go into your mind and visualize what you want. It's like, what do I want for Christmas? Yeah, visualize it. Because your thoughts are powerful because they're totally reflecting the whole creation of the universe. It's all thought. Everything is thought. It's a good, useful exercise. It will work. It's like a tennis player. If you're pretty crap at tennis and the coach shows you how to hit the ball properly, you need to practice. You need to go out. You need to practice and practice and practice. The 5 minutes a day thing, everyone can do that. In terms of what we need to do physically, Obviously, there's going to be big changes and we need to do a lot of planning and preparation. Basically, you need to find somewhere out of the sun that's going to have a certain amount of thickness of preparation. There's a great book here, Planet X Forecast, the 2012 Survival Guide. I think I've put it on the sheets of paper. There's a lot of information in there about what to do. Some of the information about, this was written in 2007, and the information about Nibiru is not quite correct in terms of its orbit and the timings and everything, but certainly in terms of the preparations, and it's got a lot of information that comes from the Kolkin Bible and the Egyptians backing it up. So I don't go into a lot of the information, because what I do is I say, okay, I'm going to point you in that direction. If you want to do the research for yourself, here are some places to go to get you started. It's about getting the picture to you. I don't have time. If I covered all of this, it would be a 12-hour lecture. We don't have the time to do that. So that's a good one to get into. If you want to know more about the Drakos and the agendas and everything, David Icke's book, is probably the best book out there about exposing them. David's, it's about 10 years old, I think.
Can I just say that David Icke's actually coming out as well? Shit, I'll pay for those tickets.
So in terms of the planning, yes, you need to find a safe place. It needs to be somewhere away from flooding and everything. But you need to get away from the coast. You're going to need to find somewhere where you can store ahead of schedule at least 6 months' supply of drinking water, bottled drinking water. You can't rely on streams or underground because the artesian spring may well be polluted by the acid rain. So you can't rely on that. If you have it as a bonus, you're going to need at least 6 months' supply of food. And you can find these lists on the web. The more that you have, you're going to need simple things like firewood, because there's going to be no fuel. Clothing. You need basic vitamins and medicines and all those sorts of things. You're going to need seeds to plant afterwards. And those seeds are going to have to be very highly tolerant in terms of acidic soils. Or you're going to need to have something, what did they say the other night? A dolomite, which will correct the balance of the soil again. Lots of things you're going to need. There's going to be a bit of a nuclear winter for a time afterwards because of all of the ash that's up in the clouds and everything. It'll take a while to settle back down again. But it's like a testing period for us to get through that 8 or 9 months so that the culling makes sure that those of us who are truly understanding why we're here go through. Okay? We've covered a lot of territory. The preparation that you have to do more than anything else is in your heart. And as we say to you, don't believe a word we tell you. Enough for you to start doing your own confirmation. And you're going to find a lot of people out there who there are going to be a lot of people who go, I don't believe all that crap. Crystal's brother's a perfect example. And he quotes, every time we send information, he will send us somebody who totally denies it all. No factual evidence to support it, just somebody who denies it. That's his proof of denial that this guy says it's right. And there's a lot of that up. You have to interpret the data through your own heart, what resonates with you. The best way to do that is to get into the highest aspect of this. Find your own truth in this. Okay? I want to make sure that when we finish here, we are at the highest perceptive state that we can be at for ourselves. And each of you will fluctuate backwards and forwards. Expect to be tested over the next week or two. If you've had a reaction, how many people when they heard some of this stuff at some point tonight went, oh shit, fear? How many people were or still are in the denial stage, I don't believe any of it? Great, fantastic. How many people have already started bargaining, thinking, well, I could do this, or, you know, why couldn't I do that, or They're starting to play this against that. Maybe? Yeah? How many people have got to the depression stage? Oh, shit. Yeah, that's a good one to get to. It's like, oh, shit. Oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God. Because the next stage is to say, well, okay, what if it is true? What if I just accept it? What if I just go, okay, how many people have insurance on their house? Why?
The bank demands it. They don't give me credit.
Yeah, because they're tying you into their system. They're tying into their fear-based system. But most people think, oh, I better get it in case the house burns down. But if we gave them advance warning,
Welcome to Rich Planets TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. Today's guest contends that free energy technology has been weaponized and was used on the day of 9/11 to disintegrate the World Trade Center towers. He also contends that it is this undisclosed black technology which is the main factor behind the 9/11 cover-up. If the scientific community and public at large were to learn that this technology exists and that it could be used to provide the world with free energy, this would then neutralize the scarcity and fear agenda that the global elite uses to keep the human race in check. Welcome, Andrew Johnson.
Thank you very much, Richard, for that excellent introduction.
Now then, we're here to talk primarily about your book, 9/11 Finding the Truth, which is in its 3rd edition. Can briefly just start, Andrew, what motivated you to write this work?
Yeah, well, we've mentioned this in passing before, and really I became involved with
tutoring for the Open University for about 9 years. It's a very private and it gives me a lot of latitude because I work from home all the time, and so I can get involved with all this crazy stuff. my original background's in software engineering, which is basically computer programming, get involved in design. So I've had to analyse a lot of information very quickly, make sense of it, and come up with a solution. That's what I've had to do in the past. I also, part of my degree was in physics, and I did a degree in computer science and physics, so my interest in energy technologies and the physics that goes along with that stems from those times when I did physics at university. I don't have any advanced degrees. I don't know anybody with access to classified information. I don't know anyone in the military. Basically, I don't know anything. So you don't believe what I'm saying, just check this all out for yourself. Pardon? Common sense, exactly. You don't know who I am, really. I've told you who I am, but, I could be lying. So, check it out. Just a note about today, I've got to leave this afternoon, so I'm not going to be, I don't know if there's a panel tonight or not, I'm not going to be on the panel. It's not a conspiracy to keep me quiet. I've got to go back and go and sort of look after my family and so on, so that's what I'm doing this afternoon. And I'm going to hopefully go through this.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. Today, the solitary inventor, tinkering in his shop, has been overshadowed by tasking in laboratories and testing fields. In the same fashion, the Free University, historically the fountainhead of free ideas and scientific discovery, has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute
Torpedoes, direct front.
for intellectual curiosity. For every old blackboard, there are now hundreds of new electronic computers. The prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.
So, President Eisenhower, 1961, some people say the last great president of the USA. Look at what happened to the president who came after Eisenhower. I think he knew stuff. He knew that he wasn't really commander-in-chief. He knew that there was another group which was running things. And I suppose the question I'd like to put to you, for you to think about, is does the group which Eisenhower was essentially referring to reach right into the heart of this very conference? Maybe it does. I'm probably going to skip over some things. I've got a lot of material here. I do have this presentation on DVD. You can watch it on my website, checktheevidence.com. Most of my DVDs are now gone. If you saw a box of different DVDs here over this weekend, those are the DVDs that I produced, the ones that were €1, the booklets for €1. I made all of those myself in my own fair hands. But I think they've all gone now. But if you do want DVDs, I will send them out. There's leaflets downstairs, so take a leaflet, checktheevidence.com. I post them out internationally. So I make all the information available freely as I can, as cheaply as I can, and I give it away if people don't have any money. Yeah, not really, it's all pretty much there. you know, yeah. And we're going to look at some things. I'm probably going to skip over some things, because I know these have already been covered by other speakers here. I put this presentation together about 2 years ago, most of it. So, but what do we mean by infinite energy, by free energy? What some people have said about free energy devices. We're going to look at Tesla reproductions, or one Tesla reproduction by a chap called Carl Paulson. It's a very interesting little YouTube video. I'll mention Wilhelm Reich, who a lot of people talk about orgonite and stuff, and got people here with orgonite stuff, or I think we did on Saturday, here again today. They don't talk about Wilhelm Reich that much. Key figure. Dr. Eugene Malov, Stephen E. Jones, cold fusion, we're going to mention that. That was in Dr. Wood's presentation yesterday. I've got a very similar clip, just slightly different. But I want to re-emphasise that, because it's hugely important. We're going to mention John Hutchison's experiments. Water-powered vehicles, again, being covered a little bit. Bedini motors. Bruce De Palma in the end machine. That's a very big one, very important. We'll look at the deaths of inventors. And we're going to look at Dr. Stephen Greer and his energy projects. Oh yes. And we're now, by the time we get to the end, I think it should be fairly clear to you why we do not have free energy at the moment. And unless we become alert and knowledgeable citizens, as Eisenhower said, we're not going to get free energy. We have to become alert and knowledgeable about some very uncomfortable things. And I think maybe for some people, that process started yesterday afternoon in one of the talks. Free energy is impossible, of course, as we know. There is no such thing as a free lunch, with these common expressions. In other words, I'm using expressions that if you were to go and have a conversation outside this room, these are the sorts of statements we make back. It breaks the first law of thermodynamics. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Heat and mechanical work be mutually convertible. If someone had created a free energy device, they'd be a billionaire. That's the common one. We all want free energy, so therefore it must be, you know, the most commercially marketable thing in the universe. So therefore, why haven't we got it? If you had a device that you could run your house on, you know, forever for no money, you'd sell them a million a day until everyone had got one, wouldn't you? So therefore, because we haven't got that situation, free energy doesn't exist. It's a simple question of logic, is it not? Perpetual motion is impossible. And no one has just demonstrated a device which produces more energy than is put into it and fed into it in some form. That's what people will say to you. Those are the sorts of things. Oh, really? But as you know, this is not true. Over unity, what's that? You hear that come across this term, over unity. What does it mean? It simply means that you get out more energy than you put in. It comes from when you divide the amount of energy output by the amount of energy input, and you end up with a figure greater than 1. In physics and elsewhere, unity is another name for 1. It doesn't just mean what people are trying to do to the truth movement. It is confused with perpetual motion because the idea is that when you connect an over-unity device's output to its input, then it will run itself. So that's why people then sort of, you know, cross-reference this idea of over-unity and perpetual motion machines. Oh, you can't have a perpetual motion machine. But I'm going to start off with some sort of ancient history, really, and this was mentioned, I think, in Maury King's talk. It was a Faraday homopolar generator. Michael Faraday was a Fellow of the Royal Society, and he died in 1867. He was an English chemist and physicist who studied the magnetic field around a conductor carrying a DC electric current and established the basis for the magnetic field concept in physics. He discovered electromagnetic induction, diamagnetism, and the laws of electrolysis. Electrolysis is the breakdown by electricity of a solution or a molten substance. Michael Faraday did an experiment on December 26, 1831, in which he co-rotated a magnet with a copper disc and measured the current output. And this is a sort of version of this on the bottom here. Even though he had done an experiment, his own law of induction tended to ignore the results of this experiment. His own law kind of couldn't explain what was seen in this experiment. Known for 150 years, the operation of the Faraday homopolar generator, the current generation, could not be properly explained. The world then later embraced Faraday's two-piece with drawbacks include mechanical friction and electrical losses, and that eventually became the current electrical generator that we use, and the rest is history. So this homopolar generator was one of these curiosities of physics which no one had really studied that much. And then, of course, I'm not going to talk that much about Tesla because there's tons and tons of stuff out there.
Torpedoes, dead ahead!
One day, man will connect his apparatus to the very wheelwork of the universe and the very forces that motivate the planets in their orbits and cause them to rotate his own machinery. Tesla's experiments showed that there was a radiant energy field present everywhere. It just needed the right equipment to extract this energy, and sometimes into a system to make the radiant energy visible. In other words, how do the energy is around us, like, you know, simple windmill. You don't know until you build a windmill. Since the Earth was formed, or the atmosphere was formed, perhaps I should rightly say. And Niagara Falls famously used generators which were originally designed by Tesla. It's a story that you weren't expecting.
Problem solved, sir.
Some anomalous energy production from within. Now, again, you know, it's been one of these expressions. When you start to look into these free energy inventions and so on, you start to find
the ship is on fire.
Stuff out there. One of the ones that I came across originally in the 1990s, documentary, which I'm going to play a clip from later on, was James Briggs's hydrosonic pump. And as in common with many other devices, this had high-speed basically, you can see here part of the hydrosonic pump. It's like a flywheel. It's got holes drilled in it. Take the flywheel inside a drum, a closed drum, and spindle of the flywheel. You squirt water through it, and then the centrifugal force sucks out the water into the gap between the drum and the end of the flywheel, and it has this effect of generating heat. And there's some effect which goes